There are ideas older than empires, older than the names of the stars, older than the maps we draw to explain ourselves. They do not fade with fashion, nor bow to the demands of our restless age. They wait quietly, like mountains under the night sky, until someone stops long enough to listen. This is a journey through 30 timeless philosophies, lessons shaped by centuries, sharpened by struggle, softened by wisdom. Not rules, but companions. Not commands, but invitations. Let them breathe through you as you sleep, and they may awaken a life you never thought was yours to live. Imagine a lake at dawn. Mist hovers above the water, the air is cool, and every sound seems softened, wrapped in a blanket of distance. You stand at the edge watching. The surface is perfectly still, so still that the sky above is reflected as if on polished glass. You see every cloud, every shade of blue, every subtle change in the light, and then a single ripple appears. A fish, perhaps, or a drop from a tree. That ripple distorts the reflection, turning the sky into a swirl of broken shapes. You realize something simple when the water moves. The reflection is lost, and when the mind moves, when it churns with noise, it loses its ability to reflect the world clearly. The still mind is not about stopping thought entirely. The brain was made to think, just as the heart was made to beat. But a still mind is a mind that is not thrown into chaos by every passing impulse. It is the difference between a forest path littered with fallen leaves and a storm that rips every branch from the trees. Stillness is not absence. It is order. It is the quiet arrangement of thoughts so they do not trip over one another, so they do not push you into panic or regret. The ancient philosophers, from the Stoics in Greece to the sages of the East, spoke of this state as the highest form of freedom. Marcus Aurelius wrote about keeping your inner citadel unshaken. Plato spoke of the usefulness of emptiness, the way a pot holds water because of the space inside it. Both were pointing to the same truth. When the mind is still, it is not a void, it is a vessel, ready to hold whatever life pours into it. In our world, stillness is rare. We are pulled constantly by alarms, messages, headlines, deadlines. The mind learns to jump from thought to thought, like a restless monkey swinging from branch to branch. Even when nothing demands our attention, we reach for distraction, as if the quiet is something to be feared. But here lies the paradox. The still mind is not empty, and the busy mind is not truly full. The busy mind is like a crowd shouting over itself. No single voice clear. The still mind is like one voice, speaking softly in a room where everyone listens. To cultivate this stillness, you do not need to retreat to a monastery or sit cross-legged on a mountaintop. You begin by noticing. Notice the breath, how it enters without you forcing it, how it leaves without you clinging to it. Notice the space between thoughts, like the silence between notes in a song. That space has always been there, but we overlook it, because we are trained to chase the noise. The still mind is born when you start paying attention to what you usually ignore. Stillness is not just a comfort, it is a tool. A still mind can see patterns that a frantic mind cannot. It can pause before reacting, measure before deciding, and understand before speaking. It can hold both joy and pain without being swept away by either. When you are still, you are not pulled into every story your mind invents. You see thoughts for what they are, not commands but suggestions. Some you follow, some you let drift away like leaves on water. There is a danger in mistaking stillness for stagnation. A stagnant pool of water does not move, but it also does not reflect. It turns cloudy, breeding only decay. True stillness is alive. It is the pause in a dancer's movement, the breath before the arrow flies, the moment a seed lies beneath the soil, before it bursts into life. The still mind is ready, not frozen. It holds energy, not apathy. You will notice that stillness changes how you experience time. In the busy mind, moments blur together. A week passes, and you can hardly remember it. In stillness, moments stretch. You become aware of small details, the exact way sunlight falls through a curtain, the faint sound of wind brushing past a window, the way your tea smells before you take a sip. The present becomes wide enough to live in, not just pass through. And when you live in the present fully, the past and future lose their grip on you. Some people chase stillness, as if it were a prize. They try too hard, and in trying they stir the water even more. The path is not to seize stillness, but to stop disturbing it. It is already there, beneath the ripples. You do not create it, you reveal it. This is why meditation, for all its techniques, often comes down to a single practice: observe without interference. Watch the ripples until they settle. Watch the mind until it rests. The still mind does not mean the end of struggle. Life will still throw its storms, and you will still feel the pull of fear, anger, and longing. But in stillness, you will notice something profound. The storm can rage without reaching the depths of the lake. The surface may churn, but beneath it, the water remains calm. This is not detachment from life, but freedom within it. The storms no longer dictate the shape of your being. And so, the still mind becomes a quiet revolution. In a world that measures worth by noise, movement, and display, you step aside. You become the calm in the room, the steady hand, the clear gaze. Others may not understand it at first. They may think you are distant, or that you do not care. But you know the truth. You care enough to keep your mind clear, so you can respond with wisdom, not reflex. You carry the lake within you. Close your eyes now. Imagine that lake again. The mist has lifted, and the sun touches the water in soft gold. The air is warm. The wind barely a whisper. Somewhere, a bird sings once, and then falls silent. You stand there, not needing anything to be different, not needing the moment to last forever. You are simply here. And in this stillness you realize, the world has always been clear. It was only waiting for you to see it. There is a truth that cannot be captured by language, though we keep trying, as if the right combination of sounds might finally trap it. We write books, craft speeches, paint symbols on stone, thinking that if we arrange them carefully enough, the mystery will be ours. Yet the moment we put truth into words, it shifts, like a shadow when you reach for it. Words are not the thing, they are the echo. They point, but they are not the destination. Imagine someone describing the taste of honey to you. They might tell you it is sweet, golden, thick on the tongue, with a warmth that lingers. They might speak for an hour, using poetry, science, and memory, and still, none of it would give you the taste. Only tasting would. Words about truth are like that. They circle the thing, they sketch its outline, but the living experience remains beyond them. The philosophers knew this well. The Zen masters told stories that seemed nonsensical, because they wanted to push the student past logic into direct perception. The ancient mystics spoke in riddles and paradoxes, not because they enjoyed confusion, but because they understood that the truth they had touched was too vast for the net of language. Even the Stoics, precise as they were, knew the limits of discourse. Marcus Aurelius often wrote to himself in fragments, as if language could only hold so much before breaking. But why then do we keep speaking? Because words are maps. They are not the territory, but they help us navigate. A map will never be the mountain, but it can guide you toward the climb. The danger comes when we mistake the map for the mountain, when we think that knowing the description means we know the experience. This is how we end up with libraries full of wisdom that no one lives, sermons recited without feeling, lessons memorized but never practiced. To find truth beyond words, we must learn the art of silence. Not the silence of emptiness, but the silence of listening. Listening without preparing a reply. Listening not to the words alone, but to what is behind them. When someone speaks, there is the sound they make, and then there is the truth they mean. Sometimes those two things align perfectly. More often, the truth lives in the space between their sentences, in the pauses, in the shifts of their breath. This is why certain moments in life feel truer than anything you could explain. The first time you see the ocean stretch into the horizon, the way a child looks at you with absolute trust, the hush of snow falling at night. These moments speak a language older than words. They bypass the intellect and settle directly into the center of your being. You do not analyze them, you live them. There is humility in accepting that truth cannot be fully told. Our minds want control, and language is one of its sharpest tools. But truth, real truth, will not be fenced in. It is not something you can own, only something you can touch. And even then, only briefly. The more you try to hold it, the more it slips away. Like water, it will not be grasped by a closed fist. Some truths, when put into words, even lose their power. Think of love. In its purest form, it is beyond definition. You feel it in the marrow of your bones, in the way your body softens around another person's presence. You can say, "I love you," and it matters. But the words are just a signpost pointing to an ocean that cannot be drained into syllables. To truly know it, you must stand in the water yourself. The great danger is to believe that because you have read the words, you have lived the truth. This is why wisdom must be practiced, not just spoken. You can read 1,000 pages about compassion, and still be cruel when the moment tests you. You can quote every philosopher about peace, and still lose yourself to anger in an instant. Truth beyond words is not in the speaking, but in the living. To approach it, we must practice being present with what is, without needing to name it. Sit with a sunset without posting about it. Listen to a friend's pain without offering advice. Walk through a forest without identifying the trees. Let the experience be complete in itself, without translation. This does not mean rejecting words entirely, but knowing when to set them aside, the way you might set down a lantern when the sun rises. And yet, words have their beauty. They can carry hints of truth, like the scent of a flower carried on the wind, a poem, a song, a line whispered in the dark. These can awaken something in you, something that recognizes itself in the sound. The danger is not in the words themselves, but in forgetting that they are the surface of a much deeper well. So, live your life as both speaker and listener. Use words to point the way, but do not confuse them for the journey. Let them guide you to the river. But then, drink. Taste the truth for yourself. It will not need to be explained. It will not care for your description. It will simply be there, filling you in a way language never could. In the end, truth beyond words is not something you can keep in your mind like a phrase or a lesson. It is something that moves through you, reshaping how you see, how you feel, how you act. When you have touched it, you will recognize it in others, in the way they pause before speaking, in the way they see without judgment, in the way they live without needing to announce it. You will not need to prove it, and you will not fear losing it. For the truth that cannot be spoken is the truth that cannot be taken away. Picture a river winding through a valley. It does not ask the mountains to move for it. It does not demand the rocks to shift out of its way. It simply flows, finding the space between, curving where it must, carving slowly where it can. This is the flowing path, the way of movement without force, progress without resistance, arrival without struggle. It is not about surrendering your direction, but about understanding that the shape of the path matters as much as the destination. The ancient Taoists taught this through Wu Wei, effortless action. They saw life as a current, and those who tried to fight against it exhausted themselves, while those who learned to move with it found strength in what seemed like yielding. It is not passivity. It is the art of knowing when to push, and when to let the current carry you. The river does not stop because of a boulder. It moves around it, and over time it wears it down. Our lives often feel like a series of battles against what is. We want things to be different, people to act as we wish, plans to unfold exactly as we imagine, outcomes to match the picture in our heads. And when they don't, we push harder, straining against the flow. But if you've ever stood in a fast-moving stream and tried to walk upstream, you know how quickly that effort drains you. The flowing path invites you to turn and move with the water instead. Following the flow does not mean abandoning your dreams or goals. It means releasing your grip on the need to control every twist and turn along the way. You set your direction like a boatman, aiming toward the horizon, but you let the current of life determine the precise bends and swirls that get you there. Sometimes you will move faster than expected. Sometimes you will drift slowly, pausing in still pools. Both are part of the journey. To live the flowing path, you must first listen. The river speaks in its own language, a language of opportunities, openings, and subtle shifts. It may be a conversation where someone unexpectedly shares the exact idea you needed to hear. It may be a closed door that forces you to take a side road, only to discover it leads somewhere better. These are not coincidences. They are the natural currents of life, if you are willing to see them. The challenge is that the flowing path rarely matches the straight lines we draw in our minds. We are taught to value efficiency, speed, and directness. But nature favors curves and spirals. The eagle circles before landing. The tree bends toward the light. The river meanders before reaching the sea. A straight line may be quick, but it lacks the richness of the winding way. The bends are where we learn, where we gather what we need for the next stretch. Think of times when you resisted change, when you clung to what you knew because it felt safe, only to be pulled forward anyway. Perhaps you lost a job and discovered a better one. Perhaps a relationship ended and made space for something more real. In the moment, it felt like loss. Later, you realized it was the current shifting to bring you closer to the ocean you belong to. The flowing path asks you to trust this process, even when you cannot yet see where it leads. There is peace in this trust. It does not erase the challenges, but it changes your posture toward them. Instead of bracing yourself against every wave, you learn to ride it. Instead of fearing the unknown bend ahead, You become curious about what lies beyond it. You still paddle when needed, still steer when rocks appear, but you do so with the understanding that you are moving with something larger than yourself. The flowing path also teaches humility. You are not the river's master, you are a traveler within it. You cannot control the rain that feeds it, nor the droughts that shrink it. You cannot stop the seasons from changing its color and speed. All you can do is navigate it with awareness, respect, and adaptability. The river has been flowing long before you stepped into it, and it will continue long after you are gone. When you live this way, life feels less like a series of disconnected events and more like a continuous movement. Even the setbacks become part of the forward motion. The rock that blocks the channel today becomes the smooth stone in tomorrow's riverbed. The detour that delays you becomes the story you tell years later with a smile. Nothing is wasted. It is all part of the water's memory. There will be times when the current feels too strong, and you fear being swept away. In those moments, the lesson is not to resist with panic, but to find where the water is calmer. Step into the eddies, the quiet pools where you can rest. And when your strength returns, let yourself drift forward again. The flowing path is not a race. It is a relationship between you and the living movement of time. And so you walk, or rather you drift with a different kind of awareness. You notice the way the sunlight catches on the ripples, the way the air changes as you round a bend, the way the sound of the water deepens in narrow channels. You see that the beauty of the journey lies not only in where you are going, but in how you are carried there. The flowing path does not demand that you conquer it. It only asks that you stay open to where it leads. One day you will reach a wide expanse where the river meets the sea. You will not remember every stroke you took, every decision you made. You will remember the feeling of being carried, the trust that held you when you could not see the end. And you will understand that the river was not separate from you. You were always part of its flow, and it was always part of you. Change is the one companion you never choose, but it walks beside you from the moment you take your first breath. It doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. Seasons turn, bodies age, relationships shift, and the landscape of your life reshapes itself while you're still trying to memorize the old one. Many people treat change like an uninvited guest, something to endure until it leaves. But it never leaves. The only choice you have is whether you fight it or learn to walk with it. Harmony with change begins with acceptance, but not the kind that feels like defeat. It is the acceptance of a sailor who knows the winds will always shift, and so learns to work with them, rather than curse the sky. You cannot control the direction of the wind, but you can trim your sails. This is not passivity. It is skill, practiced over a lifetime, in adjusting without losing your course. The resistance to change often comes from fear. Fear of loss, fear of the unknown, fear of becoming someone you do not recognize. But the truth is, you have already been changing all along. You are not the same person you were 5 years ago, or even yesterday. Cells in your body have died and been replaced. Your thoughts, beliefs, and preferences have shifted in ways you may not have noticed. Change is not a sudden event. It is the natural rhythm of life, playing quietly in the background until something makes it loud enough to hear. When you resist change, you create friction. You hold on to what is already slipping away, and the tighter you grip, the more it hurts. Like holding a rope while being pulled, the rope does not cut you until you refuse to let go. Harmony means loosening that grip, allowing the rope to move through your hands without tearing your skin. It does not mean you don't care. It means you care in a way that leaves space for transformation. Cultures throughout history have understood this. The Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi finds beauty in impermanence, in the way a ceramic cup shows cracks that tell the story of its use, in the way autumn leaves scatter in patterns no hand could design. The Greek philosopher Heraclitus said you cannot step into the same river twice, because both you and the river have changed. And in the teachings of Buddhism, impermanence is not a flaw in life, it is the very thing that makes life precious. To live in harmony with change, you must practice noticing it without judgment. See how the light shifts in your room across the day. Feel the way your breath moves differently when you're calm versus when you're anxious. Watch the way people's expressions shift when they think no one is looking. Change is constant, but it reveals itself in small details long before it becomes a dramatic turning point. Harmony also means learning to trust that change can carry gifts even when it arrives, wrapped in loss. The end of something often clears the way for what is next. A tree shedding its leaves looks bare, almost lifeless, yet that bareness is what allows it to survive winter and bloom again in spring. The chapter you are in now may be ending, But the blank pages ahead are not empty. They are waiting for a story you have not yet imagined. This trust does not mean you must smile through every difficulty. You are allowed to grieve what you lose. In fact, grief is part of harmony. It is the honoring of what was before you step into what is. Without it, you risk moving forward with a closed heart, unable to receive the new fully because you are still carrying the old like an unburied weight. Harmony with change is not about speed, it is about presence. One way to nurture this presence is to practice rituals of letting go. Write down what you are releasing and burn the paper. Take a walk in nature and imagine the wind carrying away your fears. Rearrange your living space to reflect the new chapter you are entering. These small acts make change tangible, transforming it from something that happens to you into something you participate in. Harmony with change also means staying adaptable. Life rarely unfolds according to plan, and the most resilient people are those who can bend without breaking. Think of bamboo in the wind. It sways, it leans, but it does not snap. Rigidity feels like strength in the moment, but over time, it is what shatters. Flexibility may feel like vulnerability, but it is what survives. When you live this way, you begin to see change as a conversation, rather than a battle. You speak, life responds. Life speaks, you respond. Sometimes the conversation is gentle, like a slow sunrise. Other times it is loud, like a sudden storm. But in either case, you remain part of the dialogue, aware that your voice matters but is not the only one in the exchange. And here is the quiet truth. Harmony with change is harmony with life itself. To resist change is to resist being alive. The tree that never grows, the river that never moves, the day that never ends. These are images of death, not life. To embrace change is to embrace the fact that you are a living, evolving part of an ever-shifting world. One day you may look back and realize that the moments you feared the most were the ones that shaped you the most. You will see how the bends in your path gave you perspectives you would never have found on a straight road. You will understand that harmony was never about making change easy. It was about making it sacred. And when the next change comes, as it always will, you will not brace against it with clenched fists. You will open your hands, adjust your sails, and step forward into the wind. Not because you know exactly where it will take you, but because you have learned that the journey is not just in the going, it is in the becoming. The present moment is deceptively light. It slips through your fingers like water, vanishing before you fully noticed it, and yet it carries the full weight of your life. The past may be vast, the future may be infinite, but both are built one moment at a time, one now stacked upon another, like stones forming the bridge you walk across. Every breath you take happens here, every choice you make happens here. The now is small in size, but infinite in consequence. We spend much of our lives escaping it. The mind drifts backward into memory, replaying old wounds, polishing old triumphs, wondering how things might have been different. Or it rushes forward into anticipation, building plans, constructing fears, inventing stories that haven't yet happened. These are not useless abilities. Memory teaches, imagination creates, but when they take over, they steal the only moment where life is actually lived. The weight of now is easy to underestimate, because it rarely announces itself. It is not the loud arrival of an event. It is the quiet turning point hidden in the ordinary. You do not realize that the conversation you're having will change your relationship. You do not know that the walk you're taking will lead you to an idea that shifts your path. The now is subtle. And because it is subtle, we think it is small. But small moments are often the heaviest when their echoes arrive. Ancient traditions understood this in ways our modern pace has almost forgotten. The Stoics spoke of focusing only on what is in your control, and the only thing you truly control is your response in this moment. The Zen masters taught that enlightenment is not found in grand visions, but in washing a bowl, sweeping a floor, taking a single mindful breath. To them, the now was not a stepping stone to something else. It was the destination. Living fully in the now does not mean ignoring the past or future. It means seeing them for what they are, shadows cast by the present. The past exists only as memory in your mind, shaped and reshaped each time you recall it. The future exists only as possibility, imagined but not yet real. Both depend on the now for their substance. Without this moment, neither can exist at all. The difficulty is that the now often feels too ordinary to honor. You tell yourself that real life is elsewhere, in the trip you're planning, in the milestone you're chasing, in the dream you're building. But when you reach those moments, they too will unfold as a series of nows. If you don't learn to feel the weight of them here, you won't feel it there either. you'll always be chasing a horizon that moves away as you walk. The now also holds a strange kind of mercy. When you are overwhelmed by the enormity of the past or the uncertainty of the future, the present moment is smaller, simpler. You do not have to solve everything at once. You only have to decide what to do now, and then again, now. The weight of now can feel heavy, but it is a weight you can actually lift. The weight of all time is not. To recognize the weight of now, slow down, not necessarily in your actions but in your attention. You can move quickly while still being fully present. Presence is not about speed, it's about depth. If you are washing your hands, feel the water's temperature. Notice the way it slides over your skin. Listen to the sound it makes. If you are speaking to someone, notice the tone of their voice, the way their eyes shift, the pauses between their words. Life becomes richer when you are in it, rather than thinking about it from a distance. There is also a responsibility in this weight. Every now is a seed, what you plant in it. Kindness or cruelty, patience or haste, clarity or confusion will grow into your future. The choices you make in this moment ripple outward, touching people you may never meet, shaping events you may never see. You are not powerless. You are a constant creator, shaping the world one small act at a time. Of course, the now is not always comfortable. It can hold pain, boredom, frustration. That is why we so often flee it. But the strange truth is that pain becomes sharper when you resist it. When you stay with it, simply noticing, without adding stories or timelines, it changes, it is felt, and then it passes. Even joy is deeper when you allow yourself to stay in it fully, without rushing ahead to wonder when it will end. One day, you will look back and realize that the big moments of your life, the turning points, the transformations were made up of 1,000 nows that you either noticed or didn't. You may regret the ones you let slip past unseen, or you may feel grateful for the ones you lived fully. The difference will not be in what happened, but in how present you were when it did. The weight of now is not meant to crush you. It is meant to ground you, like a stone in your hand. It has substance, texture, presence. You can feel it, turn it over, learn from it. Each now is unique, even when it seems like just another repetition of the same routine. The sunrise you saw today will never come again. The breath you are taking right now has never been taken before. This is the singularity of the moment. It is both fleeting and irreplaceable. So let yourself feel the weight, not as a burden, but as an anchor. Let it keep you from drifting too far into the illusions of before and after. Let it remind you that this moment, this exact breath, this sound, this sensation, is the only place you will ever truly live. And when you step into the next now, carry this awareness with you, so that each moment becomes not something to escape, but something to inhabit completely. Every life is made of both shadows and light. We are drawn to the light, to joy, to clarity, to moments of ease, and yet it is the shadows that give the light its shape. Without darkness, light would be invisible. Without contrast, even the brightest day would be flat and formless. The interplay between the two is not a flaw in life, but its defining texture. Shadows and light are not enemies. They are partners in creating depth. From the beginning, we are taught to prefer one over the other. We celebrate our successes, our beauty, our moments of strength. We hide our mistakes, our fears, our moments of weakness. Light is praised, shadow is shamed. But in truth, the shadow holds lessons that the light alone cannot teach. It is in the dim places that we grow roots, that we discover resilience, that we learn to see without the distraction of brightness. In nature, this balance is everywhere. A forest floor, shaded by the canopy above, is where the soil stays moist enough for life to take hold. The night sky, dark and vast, is where the stars are visible. Even the human eye needs darkness to rest, to reset itself before it can perceive again. Light may dazzle, but shadow sustains. The philosophers and mystics often spoke of this duality. The Stoics saw hardship as the forge that tempers the soul. The Taoist yin-yang symbol is a reminder that each contains the seed of the other, the white curve holding a drop of black, the black curve holding a drop of white. You cannot have one without the other, and the point is not to erase the dark, but to integrate it. When you reject your shadows, they do not disappear. They deepen, denied and unexamined. They shape your life from behind the scenes, but when you turn toward them with curiosity instead of fear, they begin to soften. You see that the shadow is not an absence of light, but a space where light is resting. A failure may be the place where humility grows. A loss may be the place where compassion is born. A period of confusion may be the place where patience takes root. Living in harmony with shadows and light means allowing yourself to feel both without clinging to either. When light comes, enjoy it without gripping it so tightly that you fear its passing. When shadow comes, walk through it without believing it will last forever. Both are temporary. Both are necessary. Life is not a static picture, but a moving landscape where light shifts with every step. There is a quiet power in accepting your own shadows. It frees you from the exhausting task of maintaining a perfect image. You no longer have to pretend to be in the light all the time. You can admit to being afraid, uncertain, flawed, and in doing so, you find connection with others, because they too are made of both. Vulnerability is the bridge between our separate islands of light. The light, for its part, is not just a reward, it is a teacher in its own way. In moments of joy and clarity, you see what is possible. You catch glimpses of your highest self, of the world as it could be. These moments give you direction when you are walking through shadow. They remind you that the darkness is not endless, that the cycle will turn, as it always has. The danger is in chasing one, and avoiding the other. If you cling to the light, you become fragile, unable to face the inevitable night. If you dwell in shadow, you forget that dawn exists. The path forward is to stand in the center, to let the light illuminate without blinding, and the shadow cool without freezing. This balance is not found once and kept forever. It is something you return to again and again. Practical harmony with shadows and light begins in awareness. Notice when you are in each. Notice the sensations in your body, the tone of your thoughts, the pull of your emotions. You may find that light feels expansive, outward moving, while shadow feels inward, reflective. Neither is inherently good or bad. They are simply different energies, each serving its role. By observing without judgment, you allow yourself to move between them more gracefully. When shadow falls, ask, what is this here to teach me? When light breaks through, ask, how can I share this? The shadow may teach you humility, patience, or empathy. The light may give you clarity, courage, or inspiration. Both are gifts, though they arrive in different wrappings. Mothers are gifts, though they arrive in different wrappings. You will also notice that the boundary between shadow and light is rarely sharp. They blend into each other, as in the hour before sunrise, or the slow fade of dusk. These in-between times are worth paying attention to. They show that transitions are natural, that nothing shifts from one extreme to the other without passing through a gradient. Your life too is made of these gradients. You are rarely fully in one or the other. One day, you may realize that you have stopped fearing the shadow entirely. You will see it as part of the same whole that produces the light. You will understand that your brightest moments are brighter because of the darkness that came before them, and you will stop trying to control the alternation, knowing it moves according to a rhythm older than you. So let your life hold both. Let your days contain joy and struggle, clarity and confusion. Stand where the two meet and notice how the contrast shapes the view. The shadows will give depth to your light, and the light will give meaning to your shadows. Together they make a world worth living in, one that is rich, textured, and complete. We often think of freedom as the absence of boundaries, the ability to go anywhere, do anything, answer to no one. But the paradox is that absolute freedom can be paralyzing. Without limits, there is no shape, no focus, no direction. A river without banks becomes a flood, spilling everywhere, but going nowhere. True freedom is not found in the absence of limits, but in knowing which limits make life richer, deeper, and more meaningful. From childhood, we are told to break free of constraints. Rules feel restrictive, schedules feel suffocating, commitments feel like cages. Yet some of the most creative, joyful, and fulfilled lives are lived within chosen boundaries. The painter is limited to the edges of a canvas, yet within that space, entire worlds appear. The musician works within the scales and measures of music, yet those patterns allow endless compositions. The poet obeys the rhythm of language, and in doing so, makes it sing. Limits give form to freedom. Without them, the very concept of choice loses meaning. If you could do everything at once, you would experience nothing fully. If every road were available all the time, you would never take a single step. Limits narrow your focus, so you can go deeper. They force you to commit, and in committing, you discover more than you would in wandering endlessly. Nature itself thrives on limits. Seasons change, not because the earth could not stay in one state, but because movement between states gives life its rhythm. Trees grow to a certain height before gravity and wind decide the rest. Animals live within habitats that both support and challenge them. Even the human body has boundaries, the skin that holds it together, the breath that measures its endurance. Without these, there would be no order, no stability, no life. In philosophy, this idea appears often. The Stoics spoke of understanding what is within your control and what is not, recognizing the limit of your influence so you can focus your energy wisely. Zen Buddhism teaches discipline in meditation, sitting still for long periods not to trap the mind, but to free it from its restless wandering. In both, the message is the same: limits, when embraced, become doorways to a different kind of freedom. That not all limits are equal. Some are chosen, others imposed. The limits you choose, the commitments, disciplines, and values you decide to live by, can become powerful allies. They are the self-made banks of your river. The limits imposed without care or consent, injustice, oppression, cruelty, are the ones that suffocate rather than shape. Part of living wisely is learning to recognize the difference, and to push against the latter while strengthening the former. To experience freedom within limits, you must first understand your own. Some are physical, the energy you have, the body you inhabit, the environment you live in. Some are mental, your beliefs, fears, and patterns of thought. Some are chosen, the promises you make, the goals you set, the routines you keep. Instead of seeing these as barriers, you can treat them as tools. The painter does not resent the edges of the canvas. They use them to compose. There is also a psychological comfort in certain boundaries. Routines, for example, create a stable frame for the unpredictable parts of life. A morning ritual or a bedtime practice may seem small, but they become anchors in shifting seas. They give the mind a place to return to, a rhythm that reminds you where you are. From that grounded place you can explore, experiment, and take risks, knowing you have a home to return to. This is not to say that limits should never be tested. Some boundaries are too tight, too old, too brittle to support who you are becoming. A rule that once kept you safe may now keep you small. The art lies in knowing which limits to honor and which to outgrow. The shell that protects the seed must break for the sprout to emerge. The challenge is in recognizing when a limit is supporting growth and when it is stifling it. Freedom in limits is also about presence. When you accept the frame you are in, you can stop wasting energy on wishing it were different and start working fully within it. A traveler stranded in one place can spend weeks longing for the journey they imagined, or they can explore every street, every face, every flavor of the place they are in. The second choice turns the limit into an opening. Creativity often blooms in the tightest spaces. When resources are scarce, you improvise. When time is short, you focus on what matters most. When options are few, you commit fully to one. Many of the greatest works of art, science, and philosophy were created within strict constraints, by people who used the walls around them as part of the design, rather than something to fight against endlessly. There is also freedom in saying no. Every no is a limit you set, a way of shaping your life toward what you value. Without no, yes becomes meaningless. By choosing where to place your energy, you create space for depth over distraction. You give yourself the freedom to be fully in what you have chosen, rather than spread thin across everything you could possibly do. Ultimately, freedom in limits is not about confinement. It is about intentionality. It is about recognizing that the infinite is overwhelming, but the finite can be transformative. The horizon may be endless, but you can only walk one path at a time. By choosing that path and accepting its edges, you can go further, see more, and live more deeply than you would in chasing every direction at once. One day, you may look back and see that the moments you felt most free were not when you had every option open, but when you were immersed in something fully, bound by a choice, a promise, or a craft you gave yourself to completely. And you will realize that the walls you thought might trap you were the very things that let you see how wide the sky could be. There is an old Zen story about a scholar who visited a master to learn about wisdom. The master served tea, filling the scholar's cup to the brim, and then kept pouring until it overflowed, spilling onto the table and the floor. The scholar protested. "It is full, no more will go in." The master set down the pot and said, "Like this cup, you are full of your own opinions and ideas. How can I show you anything unless you first empty your cup?" The empty cup is not about knowing nothing. It is about being open to knowing more. We fill ourselves constantly with facts, with beliefs, with stories about how the world works and who we are in it. These things can be useful, but when we cling to them too tightly, they block us from seeing differently. An empty cup is a mind that makes space. It is the choice to set aside what you think you know so something new can enter. This is harder than it sounds. We mistake the security of what is familiar for truth. We hold on to ideas because they make us feel certain, even when life keeps showing us they are incomplete. The empty cup requires humility, the recognition that no matter how much you have learned, you are still standing at the edge of a vast ocean of what you do not know. Children live naturally with empty cups. They ask questions without shame, change their minds easily, and absorb new ideas quickly. But as we grow older, we begin to identify with our knowledge. We see it as a sign of competence, even superiority. The more certain we become, the harder it is to pour anything out. This is why wisdom is not simply the accumulation of knowledge, but the ability to remain teachable. In practice, emptying your cup begins with listening. Truly listening, without preparing your reply, without filtering the words through your pre-existing opinions, without assuming you already understand. It means being willing to be surprised, to encounter something that rearranges your thinking. This openness is not weakness, it is strength. It is the courage to risk being wrong for the sake of seeing more clearly. The empty cup also applies to experiences. When you meet each day as if you have already seen it all, life becomes dull, but when you approach even familiar places and people, as if they still have something to reveal, you notice details you missed before. The street you walk every morning holds different shadows in different seasons. The person you think you know completely has thoughts they have never shared. The moment you stop assuming you have seen it all, the world becomes larger. Of course, an empty cup is not meant to stay empty forever. It is meant to be filled, and then emptied again. This is the rhythm of learning. Receive, absorb, release. Holding too tightly to what you pour in turns knowledge into stagnation. Pouring it out, by questioning, by testing, by staying open, keeps it alive. The cup is a vessel, not a vault. There is a certain lightness that comes with this practice. You are no longer burdened by the need to defend every opinion, to win every argument, to prove yourself right. You can engage in conversation without fear of being changed by it. In fact, you welcome the change. You begin to see disagreement not as a threat, but as an opportunity to expand the shape of your cup. This mindset also deepens relationships. People feel more seen when you meet them with curiosity instead of conclusions. When you set aside your assumptions, you make space for them to show parts of themselves they might normally hide. This is how trust is built. Not by knowing everything about someone, but by being willing to discover them over and over again. The empty cup is also essential in times of transition. When life changes, the patterns that worked before may no longer fit. If you cling to them out of habit, you limit your ability to adapt. But if you can pour them out, if you can say, I don't know how to do this yet, but I'm willing to learn, you create room for new approaches, new strengths, new possibilities. There will always be moments when you are tempted to fill your cup too quickly, to rush towards certainty so you can feel safe. But safety is not the same as truth. Certainty can be comforting, but it can also be a closed door. The empty cup is the open door. It invites life in, with all its surprises, challenges, and transformations. And so, you practice. You notice when your cup is overflowing with judgments and predictions. You pause, set them down, and make space. Sometimes this means letting go of an old belief. Sometimes it means releasing the need to be right. Sometimes it simply means listening a little longer before speaking. Each time you do, you make yourself available to something beyond what you already know. One day you may realize that the most valuable thing about your cup is not what it holds, but its capacity to hold. You will understand that wisdom is not a stockpile of answers, but the space to receive the next question, and you will see that an empty cup is never truly empty. It is full of possibility. Life has a way of moving in circles. We imagine it as a straight road, starting somewhere, heading somewhere, never turning back. But if you live long enough, you start to notice the loops. You leave a place only to return to it years later. A lesson you thought you had mastered reappears in a new disguise. People drift away, and then cross your path again. The circle returns, not because you failed to move forward, but because some truths are meant to be visited more than once. The ancients understood this deeply. In many cultures, the circle was the most sacred shape. No beginning, no end, only movement without escape or conclusion. The sun rises and sets. The moon waxes and wanes, seasons come and go. Even your own breath is a circle. In out, in again. To live is to move through cycles, and to grow is not to break free from them, but to move through each turn with greater awareness. The challenge is that circles can feel like traps. You might say, "I've been here before, I thought I was past this." You see yourself repeating an old mistake, facing an old fear, struggling with an old pattern. But the truth is, you are not in the same place you were before. The circle may bring you back to familiar ground, but you arrive with a new set of eyes. The terrain is the same, but you are different. This is where the power lies, in recognizing the return as an opportunity, not a failure. When you meet a challenge again, you have the chance to respond differently. When an old relationship dynamic resurfaces, you have the chance to set new boundaries or speak more honestly. The circle does not bind you, it gives you another turn at the wheel. Think of a spiral staircase. From above, it looks like you're moving in circles, but with each loop, you are also rising. The circle is not a closed prison, it is a pattern of ascent. The same lesson may appear again and again, but each time you meet it from a slightly higher place. The return is not regression, it is refinement. The circle also brings comfort. The cycles of nature remind us that endings are never truly endings. Winter gives way to spring, night to day, sorrow to joy. When you are in a dark season, it helps to remember that the circle will turn. The light will come again, not because you force it, but because that is the way of things. Change is not linear, it is rhythmic. In relationships, the circle can be the way love endures. You may drift apart from someone, only to reconnect later when the timing is right. The conversation you left unfinished years ago may find its way back to you, offering closure or renewal. Some bonds are not constant in their presence, but constant in their return. Even your own inner life moves in circles. A passion you left behind in your youth may resurface decades later, waiting for you to see it with new depth. A question you once pondered and set aside may return when you are ready to hold its answer. You cannot force these returns. They happen in their own time when the circle brings them back to you. The key is to meet each return with openness. Instead of saying, "Not this again," ask, "What is different this time?" The shift might be subtle, a softer reaction, a quicker recovery, a deeper understanding. These small differences accumulate, and over time, they transform you. There is also a humility in the circle. It reminds you that you are not in control of everything. You may think you are moving forward in a straight, deliberate line, only to find yourself looping back unexpectedly. This does not mean you are lost. It means you are part of a larger pattern, one that includes returns as naturally as it includes departures. Spiritual traditions often use the circle to symbolize wholeness. You cannot have a whole without both the going and the returning, both the learning and the relearning. Wholeness is not a final state you reach. It is the ability to move with the circle rather than against it. This is why many rituals, dances, and meditations move in circular patterns. They embody the truth that the journey is not separate from the return. Sometimes the circle brings back people or places you thought you had outgrown, and in those moments, you may be tempted to resist, but consider that you might be the missing piece for them as much as they are for you. The return can be mutual healing, a chance for both sides to complete something left unfinished. The circle also teaches patience. When you know you will pass this way again, you do not have to force everything to happen now. You can plant seeds without needing to see them sprout immediately. You can trust that the path will bring you back when it's time to harvest. This patience frees you from the urgency that so often clouds judgment and steals joy. One day you may recognize that the circle is not just out there in the world. It is within you. Your thoughts, your habits, your emotions all follow patterns, looping back to familiar places. Awareness of these inner circles allows you to step into them consciously, to decide whether to repeat the same steps or take a different turn. This is how the circle becomes a tool instead of a trap. And so, the circle returns. In the sky, in the seasons, in your relationships, in your own heart. You cannot stop it, and you do not need to. The beauty of the circle is that it always brings you home, even if home looks different each time you arrive. The return is not the end of the story. It is part of the rhythm that makes the story worth telling. Every journey begins with a horizon. It may be far away, barely visible through the haze, or it may be clear and sharp against the sky. Either way, you choose it, whether consciously or unconsciously. The horizon you choose shapes the path beneath your feet, because your steps naturally bend toward it. Without a horizon, you drift. With the wrong horizon, you may arrive somewhere you never meant to be. Choosing the horizon is not about predicting the future, it is about setting your direction. The horizon is not a fixed point. It moves as you move, walk toward it, and it shifts further away, revealing new landscapes and new possibilities. This is part of its beauty. It is not meant to be reached, but to guide. You will reach many places along the way, but the horizon itself will always call you forward. In this way, it is both a destination and a companion. Some people live with horizons chosen for them. Family, culture, society, all can place a line on the edge of your vision and say, this is where you are going. And for a time, you may follow it without question. But at some point, the horizon must be yours, or you will feel the quiet ache of a life lived for someone else. Choosing it requires asking what truly pulls you, not just what is expected of you. The horizon can be shaped by many things. A dream, a value, a question you long to answer. It can be as tangible as building a home, or as intangible as becoming more compassionate. What matters is that it is yours, that it resonates deeply enough to keep you walking even when the terrain grows rough. A horizon chosen out of convenience will vanish at the first obstacle. One chosen from the heart will endure. In history, explorers often set out not knowing exactly what they would find, only that they were drawn towards something beyond their current map. The horizon was a promise, not of safety, but of discovery. Your life's horizons work the same way. You cannot know everything about what lies ahead, but you can decide the general direction of your growth. That choice shapes everything else. Choosing the horizon is also about knowing what you are willing to leave behind. You cannot walk toward one line in the distance without turning your back on another. This is the quiet cost of commitment, the understanding that every yes contains a no. The freedom to choose your horizon is also the responsibility to accept what you will miss along the way. And yet, the horizon is not an obsession. It is not meant to make you blind to the ground beneath your feet. You still live here, in each step, in each present moment. The horizon gives you context. It reminds you why you keep walking. But the beauty of the journey is in the days you spend getting there. A horizon without presence becomes an illusion. Presence without a horizon becomes aimlessness. Sometimes, horizons change. A goal you thought would define your life loses its meaning. A value you held shifts with experience. This can feel like failure, but it is often growth. As you walk, you learn more about yourself and the world, and sometimes that new knowledge makes a different horizon feel truer. The courage is in letting the old one go, and facing the new line in the distance without fear. There are also seasons when the horizon feels hidden. Fog rolls in, and you cannot see where you are going. In these times you walk by feel, guided by memory, instinct, or trust. The horizon is still there, even if it is out of sight. Eventually the fog will lift, and you will see again. These moments teach patience, reminding you that clarity is not constant. Choosing the horizon does not guarantee a straight path. You may wander, detour, circle back. Life's terrain rarely allows for a direct line. What matters is that, even through the winding roads, you keep the horizon in mind. It is the quiet compass that brings you back to yourself when you feel lost. It is worth remembering that you are also someone else's horizon. To someone, you are the far-off figure they are walking toward, the inspiration, the example, the reminder that their own path is possible. You may never know whose journey you have shaped simply by walking your own with intention. In the end, the horizon is less about where you arrive, and more about who you become on the way there. It is the steady point that organizes your choices, the distant line that keeps you from wandering in endless circles. And when you reach a place where you can see beyond it, you will choose another. Not because the first was wrong, but because life is a series of horizons, each leading to the next. One day, you may pause on a hill and look back at the horizons you have followed. You will see how they guided you through valleys and over mountains, through storms and into clear skies. You will see that they were never static lines in the distance, but living relationships between your heart and the world. And you will understand that the true choice was never about a single horizon. It was about learning how to choose again and again, each time with a little more wisdom. Time is often imagined as a straight road, stretching endlessly forward, carrying us from birth to death in a single direction. But when you look closer, it feels less like a march, and more like a dance. Sometimes fast, sometimes slow, sometimes in perfect rhythm, and sometimes stumbling. The dance of time is not something you can control completely. You can only learn its steps well enough to move with it, instead of being dragged along. We speak about time as if it is an enemy, running out of time, wasting time, beating the clock. But time is not against you. It is the stage on which your life unfolds. Without it, there would be no music, no movement, no change. The problem is that we often try to force time into the shape we want, instead of listening to its tempo. In some moments, time moves quickly, carrying you along in a rush. Days vanish into weeks, and you look back wondering where they went. In others, it slows to a crawl, every hour heavy with waiting or uncertainty. The dance of time includes both, the quick steps and the long pauses, and learning to move with them is part of living well. Think of a piece of music. If it were all one note, one speed, it would be unbearable to listen to. The beauty comes from the contrast, the swelling and fading, the beats of silence between notes. Your life is the same. The fast chapters teach you momentum, adaptability, and the joy of being swept along. The slow ones teach you patience, depth, and the value of stillness. Both are necessary for the dance. Cultures throughout history have related to time in different ways. In the West, time is often treated as a resource, something to be saved, spent, managed. In many Eastern traditions, time is seen more as a flow, something to move within rather than control. Both perspectives hold truth, but the dance of time leans closer to the second. You cannot hoard time, you can only be present for it as it arrives. The trouble is that our modern pace encourages only one part of the dance: speed. Productivity becomes a measure of worth. Slowness is seen as laziness, but without the slower rhythms, life becomes flat and frantic. You miss the subtleties, the quiet moments where meaning gathers. You forget that growth often happens in the pauses, the same way a seed takes time in darkness before it sprouts. To dance with time is to recognize its seasons. There will be periods of building where every day is filled with motion and creation. There will be periods of maintenance, where your task is simply to keep things steady. And there will be periods of rest, where the most important thing you can do is stop and let the music change before you step again. Fighting these natural rhythms only exhausts you. This is not to say you should drift aimlessly. Every dance has a shape, and the dance of time benefits from intention. You can set your steps, your routines, your priorities, your goals, but you must also leave space for the unexpected turns. Sometimes the music will change suddenly. Sometimes someone else will step onto the floor and alter your rhythm. The dance is about responding, not rigidly controlling. There is also a deep humility in this way of seeing time. You realize that you are not the choreographer of the entire piece. You are a dancer among dancers, moving within a pattern far larger than yourself. The seasons change without your permission. The years pass whether you are ready or not, but within your small part of the dance, you can move with grace, attention, and presence. One of the most powerful shifts in the dance is learning to be fully in the step you are in. So much of our anxiety comes from trying to leap ahead, worrying about the steps we will take in the future, or from glancing back at the ones we stumbled on in the past. But the dance of time is lived one step at a time, in sync with the moment you are in. When you focus here, the music feels fuller, and the steps feel more certain. Time will also teach you that not every dance is yours to lead. Sometimes you follow, letting life set the rhythm and carry you somewhere you didn't expect. This can be uncomfortable, especially if you are used to leading, but following has its own wisdom. It teaches trust, adaptability, and the ability to find beauty in patterns you didn't design. There is a bittersweet truth to the dance of time. No moment lasts forever. The fast steps will slow, the slow ones will speed up. The partners you dance with now may leave the floor. This impermanence is not a flaw. It is the essence of the dance. It is what makes each step precious, each beat worth feeling fully before it fades. And yet, in another sense, nothing is ever completely gone. The rhythms you've moved through leave their imprint. The laughter from a joyful chapter echoes into quieter ones. The lessons from difficult seasons shape the way you move forward. Time does not take without giving. It transforms, weaving past and present into a dance that is always ongoing. One day, you may realize that the dance is not something you need to master in order to enjoy. Perfection is not the goal. Presence is. You do not have to match every step exactly to the beat. You only have to keep moving, keep listening, keep feeling the music of your life as it plays. And when you stumble, as everyone does, you simply find your rhythm again and keep going. Because in the end, the dance of time is not about reaching a final note. It is about staying in the movement, step after step, until the music fades. And, if you've been truly present, it will not matter how many steps you took or how perfectly you danced. What will matter is that you felt the rhythm, shared the floor, and moved with all the grace you could give. When storms come, The first instinct is often to hold on tighter to what's above the ground, to brace against the wind, to shield yourself from the rain, to cling to what you can see. But what truly keeps a tree standing in a storm is not its branches or leaves. It's the roots, hidden beneath the soil, anchoring it in place. The deeper and stronger the roots, the more a tree can bend without breaking. Life works the same way. Your roots are not just where you came from. They are everything that grounds you when the weather turns against you. They are your values, your beliefs, your practices, your connections to people and places that remind you who you are. They are not flashy. They do not demand attention. But when life shakes, they hold you steady. The trouble is, roots are easy to forget about when the weather is calm. In the quiet seasons you may neglect them, assuming the sun will always shine and the winds will always be gentle. You may even grow top-heavy, reaching for more and more above the surface without strengthening what lies below. Then, when the storm arrives, you realize too late that your foundation is shallow. Storms in life come in many forms: loss, illness, betrayal, failure, sudden change. You cannot always predict them, and you cannot always prevent them, but you can prepare for them, not by building walls that try to keep the storm out, but by deepening your roots so that you can endure it. This preparation happens in small, quiet ways, by nurturing relationships that matter, by practicing habits that keep you grounded, by knowing your own inner truth well enough that it does not wash away at the first sign of trouble. Roots grow slowly. They deepen over time through consistency and care. A tree does not sink its roots overnight. It does so season after season, reaching further into the earth as it reaches higher toward the sky. In your own life, this might mean committing to a practice, meditation, journaling, prayer, regular conversations with loved ones, that strengthens you even when things are easy. It might mean learning to sit with discomfort rather than fleeing it, so that when a storm comes, you are not unfamiliar with the feeling. It's important to understand that roots do not make you rigid. A deeply rooted tree bends in the wind. The same is true for you. Being grounded does not mean resisting all change. It means having a stable center that can adapt without losing itself. Without flexibility, even the strongest tree will snap. Without roots, even the most flexible branch will be torn away. Sometimes storms are so strong that they strip away much of what you have built. You may lose things you thought you could not live without. And yet, if your roots are deep, you will find that you can regrow. You may be different afterward, your shape altered, your canopy changed, but the life within you remains. The storm does not erase your roots, it reveals them. There is also a quiet trust that comes from knowing your roots. You no longer have to cling to every passing branch or leaf, fearing that their loss will destroy you. You can let go of what must go, knowing that your life is not in the leaves, it is in the roots. This trust makes it easier to face uncertainty, because you understand that you carry your foundation with you. Roots also connect you to others. In a forest, trees share nutrients through their root systems, sending strength to those in need. Human beings do this too, though we often forget it. The connections you nurture, friendships, family bonds, community ties, are part of your root system. In hard times they feed you. In turn, you can feed others when they are struggling. Strength is rarely built in isolation. But roots are not only about support during storms. They also shape the way you grow in calm seasons. They influence your direction, your stability, your ability to reach toward the light without falling. If your roots are tangled in fear or resentment, your growth will be twisted. If they are anchored in gratitude, purpose and compassion, your growth will be steady and strong. To tend your roots is an ongoing practice. It means checking in with yourself regularly. Are my values still clear? Are my relationships being cared for? Am I feeding myself in ways that will sustain me later? This is not glamorous work, but it is essential. You may not notice the results day to day, but when the winds rise, you will feel the difference. One of the most powerful aspects of deep roots is the perspective they give. From above the ground, a storm may look like chaos, but beneath the surface, life continues. Slow, steady, untouched by the noise above. Your roots remind you that not everything is in turmoil. Even when the world feels like it's falling apart, there is a stillness deep down that the storm cannot reach. And here is the quiet truth. The storms will always come. You cannot control when or how, but you can control how prepared you are to meet them. Every moment you spend deepening your roots, in calm, in peace, in the quiet hours no one else sees, is an investment in your future stability. You do not do it for the days of sunshine. You do it for the nights when the sky is black and the wind howls through your branches. One day, you will weather a storm you once thought impossible to survive, and when the sky clears, you will realize that your strength did not come from resisting the wind or hiding from the rain. It came from what was hidden all along beneath the surface, holding you firm. You will stand there, leaves battered, branches bent, but still rooted, and in that moment, you will know that no storm can take away what truly keeps you alive. There is a mirror you carry everywhere, though it is not made of glass. It does not hang on a wall or sit in your hand. This mirror is within you, reflecting not your face but your mind, your heart, your true state of being. You see it most clearly when you are still, when the noise of the outside world quiets enough for you to notice what's moving inside. The mirror within does not lie, but it will only show you what you are willing to look at. Most people spend their lives looking outward for reflection. We measure ourselves by how others see us, by the reactions we get, by the roles we play, and while these can teach us something, they are imperfect mirrors, distorted by the biases, needs, and perceptions of others. The mirror within, however, reflects without judgment. It shows not what you want to believe, but what is. Looking into it is not always easy. You may see parts of yourself you have been avoiding, the pettiness, the resentment, the fear you've hidden under layers of distraction. You may also see forgotten strengths, patience you didn't realize you had, compassion you rarely acknowledge, resilience that quietly carried you through storms. The mirror shows the whole of you, the shadow and the light, the flaw and the beauty, side by side. Ancient traditions often spoke of self-knowledge as the highest form of wisdom. The oracle at Delphi carried the inscription, "Know thyself." The Buddhists speak of observing the mind as it is, without clinging or resistance. The mirror within is the tool for this work, but like any mirror, it requires light to reveal what's there. That light is awareness, the willingness to turn inward, even when what you see is uncomfortable. The challenge is that the mirror can be clouded. Just as dust and fingerprints can blur the surface of a physical mirror, distraction and denial can blur the inner one. Busyness is one of the easiest ways to keep from looking too closely. If every moment is filled with tasks, noise, and motion, you never have to sit still with yourself. But sooner or later, the reflection demands attention. Life has a way of pausing you through loss, through change, through quiet, and in that pause, the mirror appears. Looking into it is not about judgment. It's about recognition. When you see anger, you can ask what wound it's protecting. When you see fear, you can ask what uncertainty it's pointing toward. When you see joy, you can notice what nourishes it so you can return there more often. The mirror does not tell you what to do. It helps you see where you are, so you can choose your next step with clarity. There is also a tenderness in this work. The mirror within can reveal how hard you've been on yourself, how much you've carried without rest, how rarely you've offered yourself the same kindness you offer others. Seeing this can be painful, but it can also be liberating. You cannot change what you refuse to see, but once it is in view, you can begin to soften toward it. Some people fear that looking too closely will trap them in self-absorption, but the opposite is true. When you understand yourself clearly, you are less likely to project your unacknowledged fears and desires onto others. You can meet people as they are, rather than as mirrors for your own unexamined self. The more honestly you see yourself, the more honestly you can see the world. It's worth noting that the mirror within changes over time. Who you are today is not who you were 5 years ago, and not who you will be 5 years from now. The work is ongoing, because you are always in motion. Each time you look, the reflection may reveal something new. Not because the mirror has changed, but because you have. The process of looking inward can be simple, though not always easy. It might begin with 5 minutes of silence each morning, or a walk without your phone, or writing honestly in a journal without worrying how it sounds. The form matters less than the intention to see yourself clearly, without performance, without pretense. Sometimes the mirror will show you something you wish you could unsee, a truth about a relationship, a habit that's harming you, a dream you've been ignoring. These moments can feel like loss, because they often require change, but they are also moments of freedom, because clarity gives you the power to choose differently. The mirror within is not just for solitary reflection. It can guide how you show up in the world. When you know your own patterns, you can choose when to speak and when to stay silent, when to act and when to wait, when to hold on and when to let go. This self-awareness doesn't make you perfect, it makes you present. And here is the quiet gift. The more you look into the mirror, the less afraid you are of what you might find. You begin to see that even your flaws have roots in something human, a need for safety, a longing for love, a desire to belong. You start to approach yourself not as a problem to be fixed, but as a person to be understood. One day, you may stand before that inner mirror and see yourself fully. The mistakes, the triumphs, the contradictions, the growth, and feel, not shame or pride, but a simple recognition. This is me, and in that moment, the mirror will no longer be just a tool for seeing. It will be a place of meeting, where you return, again and again, to greet yourself as you are. The world is made of pairs that seem to contradict each other, yet cannot exist apart. Light and dark, rest and movement, order and chaos, gain and loss. These are not accidental arrangements. They are the architecture of life. The balance of opposites is not about erasing one side in favor of the other. It is about allowing both to exist, knowing that each gives the other meaning. Without darkness, light has no definition. Without stillness, motion has no contrast. Without challenge, ease has no sweetness. From the moment you wake, you move between these poles. You breathe in, you breathe out. You speak, you listen, you act, you pause. Life's rhythm depends on this back and forth, this constant dialogue between seemingly opposite forces. Yet so often, we try to cling to one and avoid the other. We want joy without sorrow, success without failure, love without vulnerability. But in doing so, we flatten life into something unnatural, stripping away the very tension that makes it alive. The Taoist yin-yang symbol captures this truth in its simple curve, a swirl of black and white, each holding a drop of the other within itself. This is not just philosophy, it is nature. The tide rises and falls, the seasons warm and cool. Even your heartbeat is a wave of contraction and release. There is no sustained life in all rise or all fall. The balance is not static, it is a living movement. In your own life, this balance often shows up in the places you resist. You may chase certainty, only to find it dissolving into doubt. You may seek freedom, only to discover it comes with responsibility. You may crave solitude, only to miss connection. Each time you lean too far toward one side, life quietly pulls you toward its opposite, reminding you that wholeness includes both. The balance of opposites also lives within you. There is the part of you that longs for adventure, and the part that seeks safety, the part that wants to give, and the part that needs to receive, the part that wants to control, and the part that longs to let go. Many people treat these inner opposites as enemies, trying to silence one in favor of the other, but they are more like two hands, each useful on its own, but far more capable when they work together. This balance is not about compromise in the shallow sense, where each side loses something to meet in the middle. It is about integration, allowing both sides to be fully themselves while still belonging to the same whole. A tree is both rooted in the ground and reaching for the sky. It does not diminish either impulse to honor both. In relationships, the balance of opposites can be both the challenge and the gift. You and another person may see the world in contrasting ways. One cautious, one bold, one methodical, one spontaneous. If you try to erase the difference, you lose the richness it brings. If you lean too hard into the difference without respect, you create conflict. The harmony comes in valuing the opposite, not as a threat, but as a complement. On a personal level, learning this balance means expanding your comfort zone. If you naturally move fast, practice slowing down. If you tend towards silence, practice speaking up. If you avoid uncertainty, spend time in spaces where the outcome is unknown. The goal is not to abandon your nature, but to add range, to give yourself the ability to inhabit both sides as needed. One of the quiet lessons of the balance of opposites is that strength often comes from what appears to be weakness, and weakness can hide inside what appears to be strength. Flexibility in the face of change may look like surrender, but it is often the only way to endure. Confidence can be mistaken for arrogance if it is not balanced with humility. Patience can look like inaction, yet it is often the discipline that makes action effective. The difficulty is that balance is never permanent. You cannot achieve it once and hold it forever. It shifts daily, sometimes hourly, as life moves. A single conversation, a single event, can tip you toward one side, and you must adjust again. This is why balance is better thought of as a practice rather than a state, a way of moving through life with awareness of the constant dance between opposites. You can practice this awareness in small ways. Notice how your body balances effort and rest. Notice how your mind shifts between focus and wandering. Notice how your heart holds both love for someone and frustration with them at the same time. You do not have to choose one and reject the other. You can let both sit at the same table. Over time, this practice softens your extremes. You become less reactive, less desperate to cling to only one side. You begin to trust that when one opposite fades, the other will return in its time. The joy that dims will come back. The clarity that blurs will sharpen again. The loss that empties you will make space for something new. Life is not a straight line from one pole to another. It is a weaving, an ongoing braid. One day you may look back and see that the times you felt most whole were not when you lived entirely in the light or entirely in the shadow, but when you stood in the space where the two met. You will understand that peace is not the absence of opposites, but the ability to hold them without tearing yourself apart. And in that understanding, you will see the world and yourself with a depth you could not have found any other way. Not all strength announces itself. Some kinds roar, like waves smashing against cliffs, or like voices that dominate a room. But there is another kind, quieter, steadier, less visible, that endures far longer than any display of force. This quiet strength does not need to prove itself. It does not rush to be recognized. It is the steady pulse beneath the noise, the deep current under the surface, the foundation you may not notice until everything else starts to shake. Quiet strength is easy to overlook in a world that rewards the loud and the dramatic. We are taught to admire grand gestures and public victories, to measure worth in visible achievements. But the truth is, the moments that hold a life together often happen in silence. Getting up on another difficult morning, showing kindness when no one is watching, staying calm when everything around you is unraveling. These acts do not make headlines, but they shape the ground you walk on. This strength often grows in the shadows of hardship. When you have faced pain, loss, or uncertainty and learned to keep moving, you build a kind of resilience that does not depend on circumstances. It is not about denying what hurts. It is about holding yourself steady while you feel it. Quiet strength is not the absence of fear or sadness. It is the choice to keep going despite them. Nature is full of examples. The mountain holds its place through centuries of storms, not because it resists every gust of wind, but because it is rooted deep within the earth. The tree bends with the weather, not snapping when the wind rises. The river carves through rock, not by force, but by persistence, day after day, year after year. None of these make noise about their endurance, but their presence speaks louder than any announcement. One of the hallmarks of quiet strength is patience. It does not demand instant results. It trusts the process, even when the outcome is uncertain. This patience is not passive. It is active waiting, a readiness to act when the time is right. Like a seed beneath the soil, it knows that growth happens in its own season. Quiet strength also understands that not every battle is worth fighting. It knows when to walk away, when to conserve energy for what matters most. This is not weakness. It is strategy. Loud strength may charge at every challenge head-on, but quiet strength picks its moments, aiming for endurance rather than exhaustion. It also lives in compassion. To be gentle in a world that can be harsh requires more resilience than anger or aggression. Compassion is not softness that can be crushed. It is a strength that chooses care over cruelty, even when cruelty might be easier. It does not mean allowing harm to continue unchecked. It means meeting the world without letting it harden your heart. Many people discover quiet strength not in moments of triumph, but in times of necessity. You may not know you have it until life demands it of you, until you find yourself holding someone's hand through grief, working tirelessly without recognition, or making sacrifices no one will ever fully understand. These moments do not feel heroic. They feel like simply doing what must be done. But this is the heart of quiet strength. It shows up again and again, without fanfare. It's important to recognize that this kind of strength often feels invisible to the person carrying it. You may think you are simply surviving, barely holding things together, unaware that others see you as a source of steadiness. You may not notice the ways your calm presence helps those around you stand a little taller. Quiet strength does not boast, and so it can go unacknowledged, but that does not make it any less real. Cultivating quiet strength begins with self-awareness. You learn what steadies you, the routines, the practices, the relationships that keep you grounded. You learn when to rest, when to speak, and when to act. You stop wasting energy proving yourself, and instead focus on becoming someone you can trust. This is not about perfection. It is about consistency. Quiet strength is built on the small, repeated choices that align with your values. There is also a humility in this kind of strength. It does not need to dominate or control. It allows others their own space to grow, their own chance to lead. It understands that strength is not diminished by sharing it. Like a candle lighting another candle, it can spread without losing its own flame. Over time, quiet strength changes how you move through the world. You stop chasing validation from the outside, because you know your worth is not measured by applause. You become harder to shake, not because life stops throwing challenges at you, but because you have learned how to stand and how to bend without losing yourself. One day, you may look back and realize that the times you were proudest were not when you shouted the loudest or stood in the brightest spotlight. They were the times you carried on when no one was watching, when you gave without expectation, when you remained steady in the middle of uncertainty. That is the kind of strength that lasts, the kind that holds you and those you love through every storm. And when others look to you, they may not see the battles you fought quietly, the nights you endured alone, the choices you made in silence, but they will feel it, in the calm you bring, in the steadiness of your presence, in the trust they can place in you. Quiet strength does not need to be seen to be real. It simply is. Inside you there is always a fire. It burns whether you notice it or not. Sometimes it is a small, steady flame, quietly giving warmth. Sometimes it roars, filling every corner of your life with heat and light. And sometimes it smolders, barely alive, waiting for the smallest spark to wake it again. This fire is your energy, your drive, your attention, and it grows or fades depending on what you feed it. We feed our fires every day, often without realizing it. Every thought you dwell on, every action you take, every word you speak is fuel. Some fuels burn clean, giving you clarity, courage, and strength. Others fill the air with smoke, clouding your mind and leaving you drained. The fire itself does not choose. It will burn whatever you give it. The choice is yours. Ancient traditions understood this deeply. In many cultures, fire was not only a physical tool, but a sacred symbol of life, of spirit, of transformation. To tend a fire was a responsibility, because it meant deciding what would be turned into light and heat, and what would be left untouched. Your inner fire works the same way. If you feed it with bitterness, it will burn with resentment. If you feed it with patience and purpose, it will burn with steady warmth. The challenge is that we often feed the wrong flames. We give our energy to worry, envy, anger, not because we want to, but because they demand attention. Negative thoughts are like dry grass. They catch fire quickly, flaring up with intensity, but leave you with nothing once they burn out. Positive, purposeful fuel, kindness, learning, gratitude, burns more slowly but sustains you far longer. This does not mean ignoring the difficult emotions. Sometimes anger is the right fuel, driving you to stand up for yourself or protect someone else. Sometimes grief keeps a fire burning in your heart until you have honored what you've lost. The key is not to let these fuels take over indefinitely. They are meant to ignite action, not to consume you completely. To feed your fire well, you must first know what you want it to burn for. Without direction, it will flare and fade without purpose. With direction, it becomes a force that moves you forward. Your purpose does not have to be grand or permanent. It can be as simple as showing up fully for the people you love, or as complex as dedicating your life to a cause. What matters is that it is yours. Like any fire, your energy needs both fuel and air. Too much fuel without enough space, and the flame chokes. Too much space without fuel, and the flame dies. In your life, this means balancing effort with rest. Pushing endlessly without pause will burn you out. Drifting without intention will leave you cold. The art is in knowing when to add more wood, when to stir the embers, and when to simply let the fire breathe. There will be times when your fire feels small, barely holding on. This is not failure. It is part of the natural cycle. Every fire has moments of quiet, moments where it appears to be nothing but ash. But beneath the ash, heat remains. A single spark, carefully tended, can bring it roaring back. Sometimes that spark comes from within, a memory, a dream, a choice to begin again. Sometimes it comes from someone else, a kind word, an unexpected opportunity, a reminder that you are still capable of burning. The people you surround yourself with can also influence the fire you feed. Some will fan your flames, encouraging your warmth and light. Others will smother it, whether through criticism, distraction, or indifference. This does not mean cutting yourself off from everyone who challenges you. Sometimes challenge is exactly the oxygen you need, but it does mean being mindful of who you allow close to your fire. Feeding your fire well also requires letting go of the habit of comparison. Fires burn differently. Some are quick and bright, flaring up in spectacular bursts before fading. Others are slow and steady, glowing for years, looking at someone else's flame, and wishing yours were the same waste's fuel. The goal is not to have the biggest or brightest fire, it is to have the one that sustains you. One quiet truth about your inner fire is that it cannot be hidden forever. If it burns with anger, it will scorch your words and actions. If it burns with compassion, it will warm everyone who comes near. Over time, what you feed it becomes visible in how you live. The fire you feed in private will shape the life you live in public. And here's the paradox. Tending your own fire also allows you to light others. A candle loses nothing by lighting another candle. When your flame is strong, you can help spark warmth in those whose fires have gone dim. This does not drain you. In fact, it often makes your own flame burn brighter. One day you may look back and see the long pattern of what you fed your fire over the years. You will see the moments you gave it fuel that carried you through the darkest nights. You will see the times you gave it fuel that nearly consumed you. And you will understand that the fire was never entirely outside your control. You could not control every wind or storm, but you always had a say in what you put into the flames. So guard your fire. Feed it with intention. Give it the fuel that will keep you warm in winter, guide you in darkness, and light the path not just for yourself but for others walking beside you. The fire will burn as long as you tend it, and the way you tend it will shape the life you live. Every action begins as a seed. Some are planted with care, chosen deliberately, placed in fertile soil, and watered over time. Others are scattered without thought, tossed into the wind of habit or emotion, left to take root wherever they land. Whether you notice them or not, these seeds grow. They shape the garden of your life, filling it with beauty or with weeds, depending on what you've planted. Intentions are these seeds. They are not yet actions, but they hold the potential for action. They carry within them the shape of what will come. Just as an oak tree begins inside an acorn, you may not see the full tree yet, but it is already there, waiting for the right conditions. Your life's direction is not determined by sudden leaps alone, but by the quiet planting of these small beginnings. The challenge is that most of us are planting all the time without realizing it. Every choice you make, how you speak, what you focus on, where you give your energy is a seed. Some are born of clarity, a decision to listen instead of argue, to learn instead of dismiss, to help instead of harm. Others are born of impulse, a careless word, a neglected promise, a moment of avoidance. Both kinds take root. Both will eventually grow into something you will have to live with. This is why intention matters. Intention is the difference between letting your garden grow wild without care and tending it with awareness. It is not about controlling every outcome. You cannot control the weather, the soil, or the exact shape a plant will take. But you can decide what you will plant, and you can care for it as it grows. Without this, you risk waking up one day to find your life overrun by growths you never meant to cultivate. Ancient wisdom traditions all speak of the power of intention. In Buddhism, intention is one of the factors that shapes karma, the understanding that what you do and why you do it will shape what comes back to you. In the Stoic view, virtue begins in intention. The moral worth of an action lies not only in its result, but in the aim behind it. In both, the seed is as important as the harvest. Planting seeds of intention begins with clarity. Before acting, ask yourself, what is this for? What am I hoping to grow from this? The answer might be simple: to bring comfort to a friend, to learn something new, to create something useful. Or it might be more complex: to live in alignment with your values, to break a harmful cycle, to move toward a long-held dream. The clearer you are, the better you can choose the right seed for the soil you have. Once planted, intentions need care. This care comes in the form of consistent attention, returning to them again and again, even when they do not show immediate results. A seed does not sprout the moment you put it in the ground. Some take weeks, others years. The work is to keep tending, to keep showing up, trusting that growth is happening where you cannot yet see it. Not every seed will thrive. Some will fail despite your care, washed away by storms, eaten by unexpected troubles, outcompeted by faster-growing plants. This is part of life. The key is not to give up planting because of a few losses. The garden changes over time, and so will you. What will not grow in one season may flourish in another. It's also important to notice when you've planted seeds you no longer want to grow. A habit of resentment, a pattern of avoidance, a repeated choice that leads you away from the life you want. These too started as seeds. Pulling them up is not always easy. especially if they've been rooted for a long time. But every weed removed makes room for something better to take its place. Seeds of intention are not only for personal gain. Some of the most powerful ones are planted in the lives of others. A kind word that stays with someone for years, a gesture of support at the right moment, an example of integrity that inspires someone else to act. You may never see the full growth of these seeds, but they will grow all the same, extending far beyond your own garden. Patience is perhaps the most essential part of this work. Impatience is like digging up a seed every day to see if it's growing. You disturb the very process you want to encourage. The best results come when you plant with care, tend with consistency, and trust the natural pace of growth. The harvest will come not because you forced it, but because you created the right conditions for it to emerge. Over time, your garden of intentions will begin to reflect the kind of life you've been shaping. You'll see the trees you planted years ago providing shade. You'll see the flowers you didn't expect, adding beauty to your path. You'll see spaces that are still empty, waiting for something new. And you'll realize that the act of planting, of living with intention, is itself a way of being fully alive. One day you may look around and understand that your life is not a random patch of growth, but a cultivated place, imperfect, yes, but shaped by your own hands. And you will know that the work of planting seeds never ends. Each day brings new ground, new possibilities, new chances to decide what will grow next. The question is not whether you are planting, it is what you are choosing to plant. So, plant with care, plant with love, plant with the awareness that every seed, no matter how small, carries the possibility of changing the landscape for you and for the world around you. Everything you are, and everything you do is connected to something else. This is easy to forget in a world that celebrates individual achievement and independence. But the truth is, no life exists in isolation. Every word you speak, every choice you make, every small kindness or cruelty sends ripples outward, touching people and places you may never meet. The web of life is vast, intricate, and often invisible, yet you are part of it with every breath. Nature shows this interconnectedness everywhere. In a forest, the health of a single tree depends on the mycelium network beneath the soil, exchanging nutrients with other trees, even those of different species. A bee pollinating a flower is not just feeding itself, it is ensuring the survival of plants, animals, and humans miles away. Rivers connect mountains to oceans, carrying life across great distances. In this way, every thread supports the others, and no single part thrives alone. Human life works much the same way. The food you eat has been touched by countless hands. Farmers, transporters, shopkeepers. The technology you use was built from the labor and knowledge of people you will never know. Even your thoughts are woven from ideas passed down through generations, shaped by teachers, friends, and strangers. We stand on the work and care of countless others, whether we acknowledge it or not. The web of life is not only about receiving, it is also about giving. Your actions, no matter how small, become part of the weave. A single act of patience towards someone having a hard day may influence how they treat the next person they meet. A piece of art you create might comfort someone years from now. Even decisions you make in private, to live more gently on the earth, to speak truth when it matters, strengthen threads you may never see. The challenge is that this web is mostly invisible. Because we do not see the connections directly, we can forget they exist. This is why it's easy to think our actions don't matter, or that what happens to others far away has nothing to do with us. But the truth is, the web is always moving. A tug on one thread is felt throughout, sometimes subtly, sometimes with force. The health of the whole depends on the health of its parts, and you are one of those parts. Living with awareness of this web changes how you move through the world. You begin to see that your choices carry weight beyond yourself. You start asking not only, what do I want, but also, what will this create in the wider circle? This is not about living in constant guilt or self-sacrifice. It's about recognizing that your well-being and the well-being of others are deeply linked, and that acting with this awareness often brings more meaning to your own life. Interconnection also means that harm travels through the web, just as kindness does. Injustice in one place echoes elsewhere, just as ecological damage in one region can alter climates far beyond it. This is why compassion and responsibility cannot stop at the edge of your own life. The lines that connect us may be invisible, but they are real, and the more we honor them, the stronger the web becomes. Sometimes, the web pulls you when you least expect it. Someone you helped years ago may reappear with an opportunity or a kindness in return. A lesson you learned from a stranger may guide you through a difficult decision decades later. These moments remind you that the web is not just about what you give, it is also about what you receive, often in ways you could not have planned. There is humility in living this way. You see that your successes are never entirely your own, just as your struggles are never entirely separate from the larger world. Gratitude grows naturally in this understanding. You begin to notice the unseen hands that make your life possible, the people who plant the food you eat, the ancestors who preserve the knowledge you use, the ecosystems that sustain your body with air and water. At the same time, this awareness can bring a sense of belonging. Even in loneliness, you are still woven into something larger. You are connected to people who share your struggles, to places that shape your days, to histories that live in your language and traditions. The web of life is not a club you have to earn your way into. You are already in it, simply by existing. To live well within this web is to tend your own threads with care. This might mean speaking honestly, keeping promises, helping when you can. It might mean using your resources wisely, remembering that what you take from the web affects its strength. It might also mean repairing threads that have frayed, apologizing where harm was done, making amends, choosing differently next time. The beauty of the web is that no single thread has to carry the whole. You are not responsible for everything. You cannot fix every broken connection or strengthen every weak link, but you can tend the part of the web that is yours, trusting that others are doing the same, and in this shared care, the whole becomes stronger. One day you may step back, perhaps only in your mind, and see how your life has been woven into countless others. You will see the people who shaped you, the moments that redirected you, the quiet exchanges that held more meaning than you realized at the time. And you will understand that you have been both supported and supportive, both carried and carrying, for as long as you've been alive. The web of life is not something you stand outside of. You are a thread within it, connected to everything else. And every day you are weaving, with your choices, your words, your presence. The question is not whether you are part of the web. The question is what kind of thread you choose to be. For most of life, the self feels like the center of the story. Every thought, every plan, every memory revolves around my goals, my fears, my desires, my future. We move through the world like a camera locked in a first-person view. But there comes a moment, sometimes sudden, sometimes gradual, when you begin to see that the self is not the whole of the picture. You sense something larger, an awareness that stretches beyond your own skin, beyond the limits of your name and history. Stepping beyond the self is not about erasing who you are. It's about seeing that you are more than you imagined. The self is a useful construction. It gives you a sense of identity, a way to navigate the world, but it can also become a cage if you mistake it for the whole of reality. You may become trapped in defending your image, protecting your comfort, feeding your preferences. In doing so, you shrink your experience of life to what fits neatly inside the boundaries of me and mine. Beyond the self, those boundaries blur. The concerns of others start to matter as much as your own. The world's beauty becomes your own joy, its pain your own grief. Many traditions have sought to guide people past the limits of the self. In Buddhism, the concept of anatta, no self, teaches that what we call the self is a collection of changing processes, not a fixed thing. In some mystical branches of Christianity, union with God dissolves the separation between the soul and the divine. In Sufi poetry, the lover becomes one with the beloved, the drop merges with the ocean. All point to the same truth, that the self is not an island, but a wave in a vast sea. Moving beyond the self often begins in moments of connection, holding a child and feeling that their safety matters more than your own. Sitting in nature until the boundaries between your body and the air, the trees, the earth begin to soften. Losing yourself so completely in music, work or love, that time disappears and only the doing remains. These moments are glimpses, reminders that life is more spacious than the narrow corridors of self-interest. Paradoxically, going beyond the self requires first knowing it well. If you try to skip this step, the self will simply reassert itself in hidden ways, clinging to subtle forms of control. Self-awareness is the ground from which self-transcendence grows. You must understand your patterns, fears and desires, so they do not silently run the show when you begin to open to something larger. Beyond the self, compassion deepens. It is no longer an act of generosity from you to them, but a recognition that there is no absolute line between you. Their suffering is not separate from yours. Their joy expands your own. This does not mean losing all sense of individuality. It means expanding the circle until it includes more than just the self at its center. There is also a kind of freedom in this shift. When the self is no longer the only measure of success or safety, you can act from a broader perspective. Failures sting less, because they are not the end of your story. Achievements satisfy less superficially, because they are not the only purpose. The question becomes less what do I get, and more what serves the whole. The whole may be your family, your community, humanity, the planet. The scope widens as your sense of self does. This wider view changes how you hold your own life. You see your experiences not just as personal wins or losses, but as part of a larger flow. Your struggles may give you insight that helps someone else later. Your gifts may be most meaningful when used in service of something beyond your own comfort. Even your mortality looks different, not as an abrupt end, but as a transition in a story that continues beyond you. Moving beyond the self is not an escape from responsibility. If anything, it increases it. You begin to feel accountable not only for your own well-being, but for how your actions ripple into the wider web. This can feel heavy at times, but it can also be profoundly motivating. A small act of kindness or courage no longer feels small when you see it as part of a vast interconnected system. It's worth noting that living beyond the self does not mean neglecting yourself. You still need care, rest, and boundaries. The difference is that these are not ends in themselves, but ways to sustain your ability to contribute, to connect, to stay open. Just as a tree must draw water through its own roots before it can offer shade and fruit, you must tend to your own well-being in order to be of real benefit beyond yourself. This perspective also changes how you handle conflict. Instead of seeing it as me versus you, you begin to see it as us versus the problem. Solutions become less about winning and more about finding harmony. Pride softens because being right matters less than restoring balance. Anger loses some of its heat because the focus shifts from defending the self to caring for the whole. Over time, the moments when you step beyond the self may become more frequent. At first, they may feel extraordinary, something you notice only in rare flashes, but as you practice, they can become part of daily life. Listening fully without thinking of your reply, doing something generous without expecting credit, finding joy in someone else's success as if it were your own. These are small but steady dissolvings of the wall between you and not you. One day, you may look back and realize that you have been living beyond the self more than you thought. You will see how your choices have shifted, how your relationships have deepened, how your priorities have widened, and you will understand that going beyond the self is not about losing yourself, but about finding your place in something so vast and interconnected that the self feels both smaller and more complete. Most of life is lived close up. You focus on the next task, the next conversation, the next problem to solve. It's easy to get caught in the urgency of the moment, to believe that whatever is right in front of you is the whole story. But there is another way to see, to step back, widen your gaze, and take the long view. From here, the noise of the present softens, and patterns begin to emerge. What once felt like a crisis becomes a passing wave. What once felt insignificant becomes part of a larger arc. The long view does not ignore the present. It places it in context. It asks not just how does this feel right now, but also, how will this matter in a year, in 5, in 50? This is not about detachment in the sense of coldness. It is about perspective, understanding that time stretches far beyond this moment, and that the meaning of things often changes as the horizon shifts. Ancient builders understood this well. The people who planted groves of oak for future shipbuilding, or carved stone for cathedrals, knew they would never see the full results of their work. They built for generations, not for the next news cycle. This patience is rare now, but the principle is timeless. What you do today is part of a story that will outlast you. The long view can be comforting. When you are in pain, it reminds you that feelings are not forever. When you are discouraged, it shows you that progress is rarely a straight climb. It is a winding path, with setbacks that often turn into stepping stones. The long view can also be grounding when you are elated, reminding you not to cling too tightly to moments that will inevitably change. It is not always easy to hold this perspective. Urgency pulls hard. The present moment can feel overwhelming, like standing too close to a painting. All you see is the brushstroke in front of you. But when you step back, the image comes into focus. You see how each small mark is part of a larger composition. In the same way, each decision, each season of your life is part of a bigger design. The long view is not an excuse to delay action. In fact, it can inspire better action, because it shifts your focus from immediate gratification to enduring value. It changes the question from what feels good now to what will matter in the long run. This does not mean sacrificing all joy for the future. The long view includes the present, but it does mean considering how today's choices will shape tomorrow's possibilities. In relationships, the long view can soften conflicts. What feels urgent in the heat of an argument may look trivial when measured against years of shared history. The long view asks you to consider not just how to win the moment, but how to preserve the connection over time. It reminds you that sometimes letting go of being right today serves a deeper truth tomorrow. The same applies to personal goals. When you hold the long view, you accept that meaningful change is often slow. You stop expecting instant transformation and start valuing steady effort. A language is learned word by word. A skill is built through hours of imperfect practice. A strong body is shaped by daily care, not by one burst of discipline. The long view rewards patience. It also encourages resilience. When you know that storms are part of every season, you are less likely to be undone by them. A setback becomes less of an identity and more of a chapter. You understand that today's difficulty may be tomorrow's wisdom, and that growth often comes from experiences you would never have chosen. The long view can extend beyond your own life. You may never meet the people who benefit from the trees you plant, the systems you improve, or the kindness you pass on. Yet you are part of a chain of cause and effect that stretches through time. This awareness can make your work feel more meaningful, even if you never see the final result. Taking the long view does not mean ignoring the details of the present. In fact, it can make you appreciate them more. When you understand that moments are fleeting, you savor them. You notice the way sunlight spills across the table, the way someone laughs at just the right time, the way quiet evenings settle into memory. The long view holds both the span of years and the richness of minutes. Practicing the long view can be as simple as pausing before a decision to imagine its impact far ahead. It can be remembering that a week of frustration will fade in memory, or that a small effort today may matter greatly later. It can be keeping a journal, so you can look back and see how moments you thought were endings were really beginnings. Over time, the long view changes your relationship with yourself. You become less reactive, less driven by the moods of the day. You start to trust the process of your own growth. You realize that who you are becoming matters more than any single win or loss. You see your life not as a series of disconnected events, but as a woven tapestry, and each thread, even the darker ones, has a place in the pattern. One day, you may look back from a great distance, years, decades, and see how the moments you rushed through or worried over fit into something larger and more beautiful than you imagined. And in that moment, you will understand that the long view is not just a way of thinking, it is a way of living. It is choosing to measure your life not only by the urgency of now, but by the arc of what it becomes. The world constantly whispers, and often shouts, that you need more possessions, more achievements, more recognition, more experiences. It promises that happiness is always just one step away, one purchase away, one accomplishment away. Yet somehow, even when you reach what you were aiming for, the feeling of satisfaction slips away quickly, replaced by the next desire. The art of enough is the skill of stepping out of this endless cycle and recognizing that you already have and already are sufficient. Enough is not a fixed number. It is not the same for everyone, and it can shift with time and circumstance. It is the point where your needs are met, your life feels full, and the pursuit of more no longer adds meaning, it only adds weight. Knowing where that point is for you requires attention, honesty, and a willingness to step back from the noise of comparison. Ancient wisdom often warned of the dangers of excess. The Stoics spoke of moderation as the path to peace. The Buddha taught the middle way, avoiding both deprivation and indulgence. In many indigenous traditions, taking only what you need is not just a personal choice, but a moral one, ensuring the balance of the community and the land. Across cultures, the idea of enough is linked not to scarcity, but to harmony. The challenge in practicing the art of enough is that modern life is designed to keep you feeling inadequate. Advertisements thrive on convincing you that you are missing something. Social media floods you with curated glimpses of other people's highlights, making your own life seem dull by comparison. Productivity culture pushes you to believe that rest is laziness, and that your value is measured by output. In such an environment, saying this is enough becomes a radical act. Learning the art of enough begins with awareness. Notice when the urge for more is coming from genuine need versus habit or pressure. Ask yourself, will having this truly improve my life in a meaningful way, or will it simply add another layer to maintain, pay for, or worry about? This applies to material possessions, but also to commitments, goals, and even relationships. More is not always better. Sometimes more is simply more. Enough also means appreciating what you already have. Gratitude is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about seeing the value in what is present. When you begin to notice the comfort of a well-worn chair, the pleasure of a simple meal, or the warmth of a conversation with someone you love, you start to realize that contentment often hides in plain sight. This does not mean you should abandon ambition or stop growing. The art of enough is not about stagnation. It is about direction. It asks you to grow in ways that matter to you, not in ways dictated by comparison or competition. You can still aim high, but your goals are measured against your own sense of meaning, not against an ever-shifting external standard. Living with enough can also free you from the constant chase. When you stop measuring your life by how much you acquire or achieve, you create space for deeper experiences, time with loved ones, creative exploration, rest, and reflection. You may find that you need less money, less busyness, and fewer possessions than you thought to feel at peace. There is also a moral dimension to enough. In a world where resources are finite, living within your means and avoiding unnecessary excess can be a way of honoring both the planet and other people. Every choice you make, what you buy, how you consume, how you use your time, is a ripple in the wider web of life. Enough is not just a personal threshold, it can be a form of care. The art of enough requires boundaries. Without them, the outside world will continually push you toward more. This might mean saying no to opportunities that pull you away from your priorities, declining purchases that are more about status than joy, or stepping back from environments that fuel comparison. Boundaries protect the space in which enough can exist. Practicing enough can feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are used to defining success by accumulation. There may be moments of doubt. What if I'm missing out? What if I'm falling behind? These questions are natural, but over time you begin to notice something. The more you anchor yourself in what truly matters to you, the less those fears control you. You see that falling behind only matters in a race you never wanted to run. Over time, the art of enough reshapes your sense of time, as well as your sense of worth. You stop rushing toward a future where everything will finally be perfect, and start living more fully in the present. You realize that the perfect moment is not something you reach, it is something you notice. And often, it arrives quietly, without fanfare, in an ordinary day you might once have overlooked. One day you may look around your life and feel a deep, quiet contentment, not because you have everything, but because you have what matters. You will see that enough is not about quantity, but about alignment, your needs, your values, and your choices working together. You will understand that in a world always pushing for more, enough is not a limitation, it is freedom. Silence is often mistaken for emptiness, a void to be filled as quickly as possible. In our age, stillness can even feel threatening, a gap where the mind rushes to plug the space with noise, images, and distractions. Yet silence is not absence. It is presence without interruption. It has a weight, a texture, a language of its own. When you allow yourself to listen, silence can teach you truths that no amount of words can convey. Many traditions have understood this for centuries. Monastic orders across religions weave silence into daily life, not as punishment, but as a way to sharpen the senses and deepen awareness. Indigenous elders often pause for long stretches before speaking, letting words rise from a place beyond impulse. Philosophers from Laozi to Marcus Aurelius have hinted that the most important wisdom cannot be spoken. It must be sat with, breathed in, absorbed in the marrow. Silence teaches by slowing the pace of thought. In the noise of constant input, ideas and emotions collide too quickly to see clearly. But when you allow the current to slow, what rises to the surface is no longer random. You begin to see the underlying patterns of your mind, the feelings you have been avoiding, the questions you have been carrying without realizing it. Silence becomes a mirror. Yet silence is not always comfortable. The first moments of quiet can feel like withdrawal. Without the buffer of constant stimulation, anxieties and regrets rush in. This is why many people turn away from silence before they have learned what it offers. But if you stay, if you breathe through the discomfort, you begin to notice that the noise was never gone. It was simply drowned out. Silence makes it audible, and once you can hear it, you can understand it. Silence also changes how you listen to others. In conversation, we often prepare our next response before the other person has finished speaking, filling the space with our own voice even in our head. But in silence, you learn to wait, to let another person's words land fully before you decide how to answer, or whether to answer at all. In this way, silence becomes not just a teacher of self-awareness, but of empathy. One of the paradoxes of silence is that it heightens sound. When you spend time in stillness, even the smallest noises, a bird's wing, a drop of water, your own heartbeat become distinct. You realize how much you have been missing in the rush. And sometimes in these moments, you feel a sudden connection to the larger world, as if you are not merely hearing sound but being held by it. Silence can also deepen your perception of time. Without constant stimulation, minutes stretch open. You feel each moment not as a stepping stone to the next, but as a complete space in itself. This slowing can feel like a relief, especially when life's pace has blurred the edges of your days. In silence, the present stops being just a hallway you hurry through. It becomes a room you live in. But perhaps the most profound lesson silence teaches is humility. In the absence of your own voice, you begin to sense the vastness of what you do not know. Silence makes space for mystery, for the truths that cannot be articulated, for the parts of life that are beyond the reach of language. This is not a deficiency, it is an opening. It allows you to meet the world without the need to explain or control it. Practicing silence does not require a monastery or a retreat. It can be woven into the fabric of ordinary life. You can find it in a morning before the household wakes, in the pause between breaths, in a walk without headphones, in a shared moment where no words are needed. These fragments of quiet, gathered over time, begin to retune your inner ear. Silence as a teacher also asks for trust. At first, it may seem as if nothing is happening, no epiphany, no sudden clarity. But silence works slowly, reshaping the mind's contours, deepening your capacity for attention and patience. Its lessons often arrive later, unexpectedly, in the way you handle stress, or in the sudden calm that appears in a difficult moment. And yet, silence does not mean withdrawal from life. It is not about cutting yourself off from connection, or avoiding the world's noise entirely. Instead, it is about having a refuge you can carry within you, a place you can return to, where the mind is not constantly reacting. This inner silence can exist even in the middle of chaos, like the still point in the center of a turning wheel. Eventually, you realize that silence is not the opposite of sound, but its partner. It frames words, gives meaning to music, and makes room for the unsaid. In conversation, silence can say more than language in life. It can hold more than activity. And when you let it teach you, you learn not just to endure it, but to welcome it. There is a moment, often after sitting in silence for a while, when you feel a subtle shift, a sense that you are no longer listening to silence, but listening with it. Your attention is no longer grasping, it is simply open. In that openness, life reveals itself differently, not as something you must chase or control, but as something you are already inside of. And that is the lesson silence leaves you with, that you do not need to fill every space, that the deepest answers often arrive without words, and that sometimes the most powerful presence is the one that says nothing at all. Every locked door carries a story. Sometimes it's obvious, a latch meant to protect what's valuable, a barrier to keep danger out, or perhaps to keep something dangerous in. But the most interesting doors are not the ones with heavy bolts or rusted chains, they're the ones we don't realize are locked until we try the handle. And even more curious are the ones that, when touched, give way without resistance. The door was never locked at all. In life, many of our limitations feel like locked doors. We assume there is no entry, no passage forward, and so we stop trying. We stand in the hallway of our habits, staring at the threshold, building entire stories about what lies beyond, never once testing to see if the handle will turn. Some of these locked doors are illusions, ideas planted by fear, doubt, or the voices of others. The lock exists only in our belief that it does. The act of unlocking a door is more than a physical gesture. It's a shift in perception. Imagine living for years convinced that the path to your dream, your healing, or your truth is sealed shut, only to discover that it opens with the slightest pressure. You step through, blinking in the light, wondering how much time you've lost to a barrier that was never real. Yet there are also doors that are locked, and for good reason. Sometimes the timing is wrong, and what's behind them is not yet ready for you, or you for it. These require patience, preparation, and the humility to know that forcing them open may cause harm. Wisdom lies in recognizing the difference when to push and when to wait. The door unlocked is a metaphor for the quiet revolutions in life. The moments when you realize the story you've been telling yourself about your limits is incomplete. It's the day you finally send the message you've been afraid to write, the morning you wake up and say enough, the moment in a conversation when you speak the truth you've swallowed for years. In these moments, you cross into a space that was always there but unreachable until now. There's an odd sensation that comes with stepping through such a door. On one hand, there's relief, even exhilaration, at finding yourself in a place you thought you'd never reach. On the other, there's the humbling recognition that it was you, your fear, your habits, your untested assumptions that kept you outside for so long. This realization is both empowering and sobering. If the lock was never real, how many other doors have you been standing before without trying? Sometimes, unlocking a door is not about movement at all, but about noticing the one standing open beside you. We become so fixated on the obstacle we think we must overcome that we miss the alternate path already waiting. Life, in this way, is generous. It often offers more than one entry, but our attention, narrowed by habit or pride, can make us blind to the easier passage. The door unlocked also asks you to consider what you will carry with you into the new space. Crossing a threshold without awareness can mean dragging old fears, grudges, and stories into a room meant for transformation. To truly step through, you must be willing to set some of these down, to leave behind what no longer fits the world you are entering. Doors in our lives are not always external. Some lead inward, into places of the self we've kept hidden, guarded even from our own attention. These inner doors can be the most daunting to open. Behind them may be memories we've avoided, feelings we've suppressed, or truths about ourselves we've been reluctant to face. Yet when these doors unlock, they often reveal treasures alongside the shadows, compassion, resilience, and a deeper understanding of who we are. In a broader sense, the unlocked door can also be about trust. To open a door is to agree to be changed by what you find. It is an act of faith, both in the space beyond and in your own ability to navigate it. Sometimes the greatest courage is not in breaking a lock, but in walking through willingly when the path is clear. And there's another lesson the unlocked door teaches, that openness is contagious. In relationships, when you choose to keep your door open to meet others with honesty and presence rather than guardedness, you invite them to do the same. The act of unlocking becomes not just personal but shared, creating a space where connection can deepen. Still, it's worth remembering that not every door needs to be opened. Some doors lead back into cycles you've already escaped, to rooms that drain more than they give. An unlocked door is an invitation, not an obligation. The choice to enter must be made with care, for not all opportunities are aligned with your growth. If you've ever stood before a threshold, hand on the handle, you know the subtle moment before the turn, the heartbeat of decision. It is here that courage gathers, even if the act itself takes only seconds. This moment, this breath, is where your old life ends and your new one begins. The sound of the latch giving way may be quiet, but its echo can shape years. In the end, the door unlocked is not just about access. It's about awareness. It's about learning to question the locks you've accepted without testing, to honor the ones that are there for your protection, and to walk boldly through when the way is clear. Life is full of these doors, some small, some immense, some hidden in plain sight, and each one you open changes the shape of your world. And perhaps one day, you will find that the most important door of all is not the one you pushed open, but the one you left open behind you, so that someone else, standing where you once stood, will find their own way through. A river does not rush. It may look like it moves quickly in places, tumbling over stones, spilling through narrow bends, but the truth of a river's journey is one of patience. From its source high in the mountains to the wide mouth where it meets the sea, it carries the quiet knowledge that everything will arrive when it is meant to. There is no need to hurry. The water knows the way. Life asks us, again and again, to learn this patience. We often want to sprint toward what we desire. The answer, the change, the relief. We strain against time as though it were a rope we could pull toward us. But like the river, real transformation flows at its own pace. Try to force it, and you stir up the mud, clouding the very clarity you seek. The river's patience comes from its acceptance of every twist and delay. It does not argue with the rock that blocks its path. It simply flows around it. Sometimes it takes the long way. Sometimes it disappears underground for a time, only to emerge later, transformed by the journey you could not see. A human heart might call this a setback. The river calls it part of the path. Think of the moments in your own life, when you've been caught in the grip of urgency, waiting for the call that might change everything, hoping for an answer that refuses to arrive. struggling to heal before the wound is ready to close. We are taught to measure life in speed, faster, sooner, now. But the river teaches us that some of the most important currents move slowly, carving deep and lasting shapes that quick floods could never make. The patience of the river is not passive. It is not sitting still and wishing for change. It is movement with presence. The knowing that each bend brings you closer, even if the shore ahead is not yet visible. The river never doubts its direction, even when it disappears into shadowed forests or spills into marshlands where the way forward seems unclear. There is a trust in the flow itself, a surrender to something larger than the immediate view. And here is the paradox. Though the river moves slowly compared to our restless minds, it is relentless. It will wear down mountains over centuries, carrying their stones grain by grain to the sea. The river's patience is active persistence, the kind that keeps going not because it is urgent, but because it cannot do otherwise. This is the patience that changes landscapes. We might ask ourselves, what would it look like to live with this kind of patience? To pursue our work, our healing, our dreams not in a rush to arrive, but with the steady knowing that the journey is shaping us just as much as the destination. In the river's time, there are no wasted days. Even when the banks narrow, or the waters seem still, there is movement. The river's patience is also tied to its adaptability. It accepts each season without resistance. The spring thaw that swells its currents, the summer drought that slows them, the autumn leaves that drift on its surface, the winter ice that locks it in silence. Each phase has its own work, its own form of movement, even if to the eye it appears still. In our own lives, patience means allowing seasons to be what they are, rather than forcing a summer's speed in the heart of winter. When you sit by a river long enough, you start to feel the way its time differs from yours. Minutes stretch, hours soften. You begin to notice small things, the glint of sunlight on ripples, the way a fallen branch creates new patterns of flow, the sound of water folding over itself. These are not the signs of rushing, but of enduring presence. The river is not in a hurry because it is already where it needs to be. And here is where the lesson becomes clear. The river does not measure its worth by arrival. It is not better at its mouth than at its source. Every moment of its journey is the river. In the same way, our lives are not only meaningful at their peaks or conclusions, the quiet days, the pauses, the detours. These are part of the whole. Patience is not just about waiting for something to happen. It is about recognizing that something is already happening in every moment. Of course, patience is not easy. It asks us to let go of the illusion that we control the pace of everything. It asks us to trust the unfolding, to accept that the waters may take us through unfamiliar landscapes before reaching the place we imagined. It asks us to stop measuring worth in terms of speed and start feeling the depth of the current beneath us. The river's patience also teaches us to listen. It has learned the language of its banks, the voices of rain and wind, the whispers of stones shifting beneath the surface. In our own lives, patience gives us the space to hear things we miss when we rush. The quiet truths inside us, the subtle signals from others, the gentle nudges from life itself. Perhaps this is why we feel calmer when we watch a river. We are remembering something we already know but have forgotten in the noise of urgency. We are reminded that we too are part of a flow larger than our immediate plans, that the things meant for us will arrive, not on our schedule but in their right season, and that no amount of rushing will make them come sooner, only cloud our view of them when they do. In the end, the patience of the river is a mirror for our own capacity to endure, to adapt, and to trust. We can be like the river, moving forward without hurry, carrying what matters, letting go of what no longer belongs, shaping the world quietly and steadily over time. When you next find yourself caught in urgency, imagine you are standing on the bank of a slow, winding river. Watch how it moves. Feel how it breathes. And remember, it is not racing to the sea. It is already on its way. There is a comfort we are taught to seek, the comfort of knowing. We chase answers the way a traveler chases daylight, as though the worst fate imaginable would be to remain in the dark. We ask, we analyze, we explain, we name, and yet some of the most profound moments in life do not come wrapped in certainty. They come in the still, strange places where no answer will arrive. This is the landscape of mystery. Mystery is not the absence of truth. It is the presence of something too vast for our current understanding. Standing in mystery means allowing yourself to face what cannot be solved, to live without the comfort of complete knowledge. It is the way you stand before the ocean at night, unable to see the horizon, feeling the pull of tides you cannot control. You do not need to know the depth to know the water is real. Our instinct is to push past mystery as quickly as possible, to replace the unknown with something familiar, even if it is only a guess. But the deeper truths of life resist this. Love, death, consciousness, time. They are not puzzles to be solved and put away. They are seas you learn to navigate, knowing there will always be parts beyond your sight. To stand in mystery is to resist the urge to shrink the unknown down to the size of what is safe. It is to accept that not all things will yield to you, no matter how carefully you think, how much you prepare, or how far you search. It is to live in relationship with something that will not be tamed. This is not weakness. In fact, it requires strength to live alongside questions that have no clear end. It requires the courage to let your mind rest in a space without solid ground, to open your hands instead of clenching them around certainty. When you stand in mystery, you become like a tree in the fog. You cannot see the whole forest, but you remain rooted where you are, trusting the ground beneath you even when it disappears into shadow. There is a particular beauty in this space. Mystery has its own light, though it is softer, more diffused than the bright glare of knowing. In mystery, you notice details you would miss if you were rushing toward an answer. The shifting patterns of wind through leaves, the way a shadow changes shape as the sun moves, the quiet rhythm of your own breath. You begin to see life not as a problem to be solved, but as a presence to be felt. Sometimes the mystery is joyous, the birth of a child, the spark of creativity, the sudden moment of connection with a stranger. Other times, it is heavy, the loss that defies reason, the injustice that seems without explanation, the moments when meaning slips from your grasp. In both, the unknown is there, asking you to meet it without turning away. The mind will always try to close the gap. It will construct stories to explain the unexplainable. Some of these stories are useful. They help us navigate the world, but if we mistake them for the final truth, we risk cutting ourselves off from the deeper reality that lives beyond our comprehension. The mystery is not there to frustrate us. It is there to remind us of our place in the larger whole. When you stand in mystery long enough, something begins to change. The need for an immediate answer loosens. The fear of not knowing fades. You begin to realize that the unknown is not a void. It is a field rich with possibility. Every step you take into it is an act of trust. Trust that life holds more than your current vision, that meaning can unfold slowly, that not everything must be resolved in your lifetime to be worth living. Ancient wisdom traditions have always honored the mystery. They remind us that naming is powerful, but so is silence, that there are truths which can be pointed to, but never captured in words. That to stand before the great unknown with humility is not to be lost, it is to be found in a deeper way. In our modern world, we are conditioned to believe that knowledge is progress, and ignorance is failure. But there is another way to live, a way where the unknown is not a flaw in the map, but part of the terrain itself. This way allows for wonder, for awe, for reverence toward what cannot be owned. It is the way of the poet, the mystic, the child who looks at the stars without needing to measure them. Standing in mystery also transforms the way we see each other. Every person carries within them a depth that will never be fully known. You can love someone for a lifetime, and still find corners of their soul that are beyond your reach. To accept this is to love without possession, to honor the sacred distance between souls as much as the closeness. There will be times when mystery feels unbearable, when you ache for answers that will not come. In those moments, it helps to remember that the unknown is not your enemy. It is the very space in which growth, change, and transformation occur. The seed does not know the shape of the tree it will become. The caterpillar does not understand the flight of the butterfly. You do not need to see the end to be in the process of becoming. The art of standing in mystery is the art of patience, presence, and humility. It is knowing that you can stand in the middle of the unanswerable and still be whole. It is the willingness to listen, even when no reply comes. It is the quiet courage to keep walking when the path ahead disappears into fog. And perhaps most importantly, it is remembering that mystery is not something to escape. It is something to live with, to walk beside, to let shape you. The greatest transformations often come, not when we find the answers, but when we learn to live well in the absence of them. So the next time you find yourself pressing against the edges of the unknown, take a breath, loosen your grip. Stand where you are, let the mystery be what it is, vast, untamed, alive. You are part of it, and it is part of you. And in that shared space, something deeper than certainty is quietly holding you. Before you ever spoke a word, before you even opened your eyes to the light of the world, you were breathing. It was the first quiet contract you signed with life, to draw air into your body and let it go again, over and over, without conscious effort. You may not think of it often, but your breath has been your most loyal companion, following you through every moment, every season, every rise and fall, and like a quiet friend who never demands attention, it waits patiently for you to notice it. The breath is more than oxygen. It is a rhythm, a bridge between the seen and the unseen, the conscious and the unconscious. It is the only bodily function that happens automatically, yet can be brought under your deliberate control at any moment. In this way, it becomes a doorway, a direct path back into the present. When your mind races forward into worry or backward into regret, your breath can call you home. To be guided by your breath is to anchor yourself in the simplest truth. You are here. Now, every inhale is an arrival. Every exhale is a release. The body knows this instinctively, but the mind often forgets. The mind chases its stories, its plans, its doubts, while the breath remains steady, waiting for you to return. If you pay close attention, you will see that your breath reflects your state of being, shallow and quick. When you are anxious, heavy and slow when you are tired, deep and expansive when you are at peace. It is not just a response to your emotions, it is also a way to shape them. To slow the breath is to send a signal to the body that it is safe. To deepen the breath is to give the mind space to open. Ancient traditions have known this for thousands of years. Yogis, monks and healers have used breath as a tool to enter meditation, to focus the mind, to steady the heart. In some cultures, the word for breath is the same as the word for spirit or life force. This is not a coincidence. To follow the breath is to follow life itself. There is no need to control it with force. The guidance of the breath is not about rigid discipline. It is about trust. Trust that if you soften your attention, the breath will lead you exactly where you need to go. In moments of overwhelm, you can close your eyes, place a hand on your chest, and simply feel it rising and falling. You do not have to fix anything. You do not have to solve the whole of your life in that instant. You just have to breathe. Inhale, the world enters you. Exhale, you return something back. This exchange happens tens of thousands of times a day. And yet, how often do you let it be more than a mechanical act? Each breath can be an invitation to presence, to gratitude, to awareness. When you treat it this way, you discover that the breath is not just sustaining you, it is guiding you toward the life you want to live. Consider the times you have held your breath without realizing it, waiting for a verdict, reading a message you fear, standing on the edge of something new. That pause between inhale and exhale holds an entire world of anticipation. It reminds you that the breath is also a measure of courage. To keep breathing when fear tightens the chest is to choose life over retreat. When you are unsure of your path, your breath can be your compass. You may not have the map, but you have this simple, steady rhythm that says, stay here, take the next step, then the next. You don't have to see the entire journey. The breath will carry you through it, one moment at a time. And in the quietest moments, when you are alone and the world has gone still, you may notice something even more mysterious. The breath breathes you. You are not the one keeping it going. You are being breathed by life itself, as though some deeper intelligence is keeping you here, holding you in its care. This realization changes everything. You begin to see that you are not separate from life, but a part of its ongoing flow, carried in the same way rivers are carried to the sea. The breath also teaches impermanence. Each inhale is a beginning, each exhale an ending, and yet, neither is permanent. They follow each other endlessly, reminding you that nothing in life stays fixed. The things you cling to will pass. The things you fear will pass. You will pass too in time, and even that is part of the same natural rhythm. You do not have to wait for a crisis to remember your breath. You can make it a practice, a small ritual in the middle of ordinary days. While walking, feel the air fill your lungs. While waiting, notice the gentle exchange between your body and the invisible world around you. While speaking with someone, let the breath keep you grounded so your words carry clarity instead of haste. When you begin to live this way, something shifts. Life feels less like a storm you must control, and more like a current you can flow with. Your breath becomes a reminder that you have everything you need to meet this moment, no matter what it contains. It becomes a friend who never abandons you, a teacher who speaks without words. One day, your breath will leave you for the last time. That final exhale will be your closing bow, your return to the vast silence from which you came. But until that day, you can let it be your constant guide, your quiet anchor in the chaos, your proof that you are still here. Right now, as you read these words, you are breathing, you are connected to life in the most intimate way possible. And if you let it, this breath, the one you are taking at this very moment, can lead you exactly where you need to be. There is a part of you that has always been searching. You may not have called it that, but it has been there, the quiet pull towards something beyond your current life. Sometimes it feels like a longing for purpose, sometimes like an urge to find a direction, and sometimes like a faint memory of a place you've never been. You imagine that somewhere, there must be a path, clear, marked, certain, and that if you could only find it, everything would make sense. The truth is, the path you're looking for doesn't exist in the way you think it does. There is no single road, no neat sequence of steps laid out from start to finish. The idea of a fixed path is comforting because it promises safety, but it also creates an illusion that life can be mapped in advance. The reality is more fluid, more mysterious. You are not here to follow a path. You are here to walk a pathless way. The pathless way is not the absence of direction. It is the understanding that your direction is created by walking. Each choice, each moment, each breath becomes the next step, and only after you take it does the ground appear beneath your feet. It is like crossing a river on stones that rise from the water one at a time, just as you need them. This way of living is unsettling at first. We have been taught to seek certainty, to believe that a plan equals security, but the more tightly you hold to a fixed plan, the more fragile your sense of stability becomes. The pathless way invites you to loosen that grip, to trust that you can walk without knowing exactly where you'll arrive. If you look at nature, you will see that it never needs a blueprint to move forward. Rivers do not know their course in advance. They find it by flowing. Trees do not have a map of how they will grow. They respond to light, wind, and soil, shaping themselves along the way. Your life is not separate from this. You too are shaped by the invisible currents of time and experience. Walking the pathless way means meeting each moment as it comes. Instead of demanding that life match your expectations, you learn to adapt to what is actually here. This does not mean passivity. It means participation without clinging. It is the difference between fighting the ocean and learning to swim with its waves. Some people fear that without a clear path, they will drift aimlessly. But the truth is that aimlessness only comes when you lose connection to the present. On the pathless way, you are deeply connected, because every step is a decision to be here. Without a rigid road, you have the freedom to explore, to turn, to pause, to follow what calls to you. You discover that meaning is not found at the end of the path, but in how you walk it. It is in this openness that the most unexpected beauty can appear. When you are not bound to a strict route, you notice the small details, the way sunlight filters through leaves, the sound of a bird you would have missed if you were rushing toward a goal. You meet people you would not have met, stumble upon opportunities you could not have planned. The pathless way is full of these quiet gifts. Still, there will be times when uncertainty feels heavy, when you wish for a sign or a guarantee. In those moments, it is tempting to freeze, to wait until you are sure. But the way forward is revealed only by moving. Even the smallest step is enough to shift the view, to show you the next piece of the landscape. You will also find that the pathless way changes you. It teaches patience because there is no final destination to rush toward. It teaches trust, because you must lean into the unknown without a safety net. And it teaches humility, because you realize you are not the sole author of your journey. Life itself is co-creating it with you. Think of all the moments in your past when things did not go according to plan, yet led you to something better than you imagined. The job you didn't get that pushed you toward a different calling. The relationship that ended, making space for one that was more aligned. The trip you thought was a detour, that became a turning point. The pathless way works like this, not by giving you what you expect, but by giving you what will grow you. One of the quietest truths of the pathless way is that it is always under your feet, even when you feel lost. The sense of being off track comes only from comparing your life to an imagined map that never really existed. Letting go of that map is not the same as giving up. It is the act of seeing where you actually are and beginning from here. This way is not for everyone. It asks you to live without the comfort of certainty, to replace control with curiosity, but it also offers something rare, the freedom to be fully alive in the unfolding of your own story. No one has ever walked your exact steps before, and no one ever will again. This is not a flaw. It is the very essence of your journey. One day, You may look back and see the shape of it, the way each twist and pause led you here, but that is for later. For now, there is only this step. This breath, this open, unmarked ground beneath your feet. The pathless way is not about getting somewhere else. It is about realizing that you are already in the middle of the road that was meant for you, a road you are creating with every step you take, every word you speak, every action you take, every thought you allow to take root. All of them ripple outward, touching places and people you may never see. We tend to think of life as small and contained, defined by the limits of our own bodies and the years we are given. But in truth, you are an echo that will travel far beyond the moment you are in now. Imagine standing at the edge of a still lake and dropping a single stone into the water. You watch the ripples spread outward in widening circles, reaching further and further until they disappear from sight. Yet even when you can no longer see them, they are still moving, still shifting the surface in subtle ways. Your presence in the world is much the same. Every interaction, a kindness offered, a hurt inflicted, a silence kept, becomes part of the great, endless chain of cause and effect. You may not remember the face of a stranger who smiled at you years ago, but that smile might have shifted your day, softened your mood, made you treat someone else with more patience. That, in turn, might have changed the way that person treated another, and so on, weaving a web of influence that stretches far beyond what you could trace. These are the echoes, invisible, but never absent. We often underestimate this power because we measure significance by scale. We imagine that to truly leave a mark, we must do something grand, something history will remember. But eternity is not built only from monuments and names etched in stone. It is also built from quiet gestures, unrecorded moments, fleeting connections. The person who plants a tree may never sit beneath its full shade, yet countless others might. The one who speaks a single word of encouragement might unknowingly alter the path of another's life. Your echoes are not limited to what you consciously create. They are carried in your habits, your values, your way of being in the world. Children learn not only from what you tell them, but from what you show them in the unguarded moments. The way you handle frustration, the way you treat those with nothing to offer you, the way you carry yourself when no one is watching. These patterns replicate themselves across generations, like seeds drifting on unseen winds. It is humbling to realize that your life is both larger and smaller than you thought. Larger, because you will never truly know the full reach of your influence. Smaller, because you are only one voice in a chorus that has been singing long before you arrived and will continue long after you are gone. This awareness can soften the ego. It can also deepen your sense of responsibility. If everything you do becomes part of an ongoing echo, what kind of sound do you want to send into the world? It's not about perfection. No one can live without causing harm in some way. It's about awareness. If you move through life asleep to your impact, your echoes may carry carelessness, resentment, or fear. If you move through life awake, your echoes can carry compassion, truth, and courage. Think of the people whose influence still shapes you today, even if they are no longer alive. A teacher who believed in you when you didn't believe in yourself. A friend who showed you how to laugh in the middle of hardship. A writer whose words found you at the exact moment you needed them. They are still here in you, their echoes alive in the way you think, act, and dream. And in turn you will carry their essence forward, passing it to people who may never know their names. This is why even the smallest choice matters. A single act may feel insignificant in isolation, but life is not lived in isolation. It is a web, and every thread you touch vibrates through the whole. Sometimes you will see the results of what you've done. Often, you will not. The absence of proof does not mean the echo hasn't reached someone. There is also an echo that moves inward, not just outward. The words you speak to yourself, the way you treat your own mind and body, send ripples through your inner world. Speak to yourself with cruelty, and that tone will color the way you treat others. Treat yourself with gentleness, and you will find it easier to extend that same grace. In this way, self-care is not self-centered. It is the tuning of the instrument you play into the world. The idea of echoes through eternity can feel overwhelming, as though you must carry the weight of every possible outcome. But you are not here to control the entire web, only your own part of it. Think of your life as a note in a vast piece of music. You cannot compose the entire song, but you can choose whether your note is played with clarity and intention. One day, you will leave this world. Your name will fade from memory. The objects you owned will scatter, but the way you lived, the tone of your presence, the patterns you set in motion will remain in the fabric of things. You cannot stop your echoes, but you can shape them while you are here. So ask yourself, if this moment were to ripple forward forever, what would you want it to carry? A little more patience? A little more truth? A little more kindness than was given to you? The choice is always present, in every breath, in every step. And perhaps the most profound part of this is that you too are an echo, the continuation of countless lives before you. You are the result of choices made by people you will never meet. You are living proof of their steps, their words, their quiet acts. Just as you shaped the future, they shaped you. When you see this clearly, you understand nothing is ever truly lost. Every life, every moment, every breath is part of an unbroken chain. We are each both the echo and the origin, both the stone and the ripple, both the past and the future. And so you walk forward, knowing that the sound you make now will travel far. You will never hear all of it, but you can be sure it will remain, carried onward by the current of time, weaving itself into the eternal song. There is a quiet kind of freedom that comes only when you release your grip. We spend so much of our lives holding on, to people, to memories, to dreams, to identities we've long outgrown. We cling because we believe letting go means losing, and losing feels like failure. But there is a truth that moves deeper than our fear. Not everything we hold is meant to stay, and not everything that leaves is a loss. Letting go is not about erasing the past. It is about loosening the thread that binds you to what no longer serves the life you are living now. A bird cannot take flight if its claws remain tangled in the branch. A river cannot move forward if it tries to carry every stone it's ever touched. You cannot fully step into the present if part of you is still holding on to the weight of yesterday. Sometimes, the hardest thing to release is not a person or a thing, but an idea, the story you've told yourself about who you are, the future you thought you were promised, the way you believed life should be. We craft these stories so carefully that when they no longer match reality, it feels like the ground beneath us is broken. Letting go of them feels like letting go of ourselves. And yet, if you look closely, you will see that what you lose is not your essence, but the shell that kept you from growing into it. It is not weakness to release something you once cherished. It takes courage to stand in the space that remains, empty and unknown, and trust that it will be filled again in its own time. The mind fears the empty space, but the heart understands it. The heart knows that space is not absence. It is possibility. Think of the seasons. Trees shed their leaves, not because they have stopped valuing them, but because holding them through the winter would cost them their life. The leaves fall, the branches stand bare, and only then can spring bring new growth. The tree does not rush this cycle. It does not try to glue the leaves back on. It trusts the process, even in the cold. We too live in seasons. There are friendships that carry us for a time, and then drift apart. There are dreams that light our path for years before they fade. There are places we once belonged that now feel like someone else's story. To try to keep them all is to carry a weight that will slow you until you cannot move at all. Letting go does not mean forgetting. You can honor what was without insisting it remain what it once was. You can carry the lesson without carrying the form it came in. The love you shared, the experiences you lived, the person you were in those moments. They remain a part of you even if the chapter is closed. The gift of letting is that it opens your hands, while they are clenched around what has already passed. They cannot receive what is trying to come to you now. We often think we are waiting for life to offer us something new, but life has been offering all along. It is our grip on the old that blocks the way. There is also letting go within the self. The grudges we keep against ourselves, the mistakes we replay in our minds, the shame we wear like a second skin. These weigh us down as much as anything outside us. To release them is not to pretend they never happened. It is to say, I see that version of me. I understand why they acted as they did, and I allow them to rest. I am not frozen in that moment anymore. You might think letting go means the end of love, but often it is an act of love itself. To release someone can be to give them back to their own path. To release a dream can be to make room for one that fits who you have become. To release an old self can be to finally meet the one you are now. Letting go is not a single act. It is a practice, repeated again and again. Some days you will feel light and unburdened. Others you will feel the old weight creeping back. That is part of the process. You do not fail by feeling the ache. You honor the truth that something mattered to you. The key is not to let that ache chain you to a door that has already closed. Sometimes, letting go happens in a moment. A single decision, a single breath, and you feel the shift immediately. Other times, It happens so slowly that you don't notice until one day you wake up and realize the thing you thought you could never live without no longer stirs the same pull in your chest. The threads dissolve quietly, without ceremony, and you see that you are still whole. The beauty of this gift is that it doesn't just free you, it frees what you release. Holding something too tightly can smother it, twist it, turn it into something it was never meant to be. Letting it go allows it to find where it truly belongs, and allows you to step into the life that truly belongs to you. And when you look back, you will see that each act of letting was not the end of your story, but the clearing of space for its next chapter. The empty branch was not the death of the tree, it was the invitation for spring. The empty hands were not a sign of loss, they were the beginning of receiving. So the next time you feel the urge to cling, pause, ask yourself, is this still meant for me? Does this still nourish the person I am becoming? And if the answer is no, trust yourself enough to release it. You are not letting it fall into nothing, you are letting it return to the flow from which it came. In the quiet after the release, you may feel fear, you may feel relief, you may feel both at once, but give it time, and you will feel something deeper. The lightness of being untethered, the openness to what might come next, the knowing that you are strong enough to live without what you once thought was essential. That is the gift of letting. It is the reminder that you are not defined by what you keep, but by the space you are willing to create for life to move through you. There is a moment, rare, fleeting, and yet eternal, when the boundaries you have always trusted dissolve. The lines that separate you from the world blur, then vanish. The air that enters your lungs feels no different from the air moving through the trees. The ground beneath your feet feels like part of your own body. The voices around you do not belong to others, but are ripples in the same still lake you are made of. This is the truth, whispered in every ancient tradition. When all is one, there is no you and them, no here and there. There is only being. We spend most of our lives navigating through separation. We think in categories, draw maps in our minds, assign roles to ourselves and to others. It is how the human mind makes sense of the vastness. But beneath that structure lies something deeper. The recognition that everything from the stars to the soil to the smallest thought arises from the same source. When you touch that truth, even for an instant, it changes how you see everything after. It does not mean you stop being yourself, or that the differences between things vanish in some bland sameness. It means the differences no longer divide you. The tree and the bird and the wind in its branches are still distinct, but they are threads in the same woven cloth. And you are not looking at the cloth from outside. You are part of its weave. Many people encounter this truth, not in grand revelations, but in ordinary moments. Sitting at a window with rain tapping against the glass, walking alone at night, under a sky full of stars, holding the hand of someone who doesn't need words to understand you. The sense arrives quietly, like a gentle tide rising around your ankles. For a breath, you stop clinging to your thoughts, and fall into the wider awareness that has been holding you all along. When all is one, the concept of self-interest transforms. To care for yourself is to care for the whole. To care for the whole is to care for yourself. The pain you inflict on another is a pain you eventually feel. The kindness you extend ripples outward and circles back in ways you may never see. It becomes impossible to think of life as a competition when you understand that there is no final victory over that which is also you. This way of seeing does not make life easier in the sense of avoiding discomfort. If anything, it makes you more sensitive. The suffering of others touches you more deeply because the wall that once protected you has grown thin, but it also makes joy brighter. The laughter of a stranger becomes your laughter. The beauty of a sunrise feels as though it rises inside you. The mind will try to return to its categories, its sense of control. That is natural. The illusion of separation is useful in many ways. You still need to know where your body ends so you don't walk into walls. You still have to make choices, follow paths, and tend to your own needs. But knowing that these divisions are functional illusions rather than ultimate truths changes the way you move through them. You stop building fortresses around your identity. You stop needing to win every argument. You stop mistaking possession for belonging. There is an ancient parable of a wave traveling across the ocean. It looks ahead and sees waves crashing against the shore and thinks, I am going to die. But another wave says, you are not a wave, you are water. The form changes, but the essence remains. You have always been the ocean. When you live with the awareness of oneness, forgiveness comes more easily, not because wrongs cease to matter, but because you see that holding on to resentment is like poisoning your own bloodstream. you see that what harms one part of the whole eventually harms the whole itself, and that includes you. This truth also changes how you see time. When all is one, there is no isolated past or future. The actions of those long gone still breathe in the air you inhale. The choices you make now will echo in lives you will never meet. Your existence is not a single thread moving alone through history, but part of a vast tapestry being woven in every direction at once. There is humility in this. You are not the center of the universe, and yet, in another sense you are, because the universe is not separate from you. Every person, every grain of sand, every drop of rain is the center, because the whole is present in every part. This is why some mystics say that, to know yourself fully, is to know the entire cosmos, and to know the cosmos is to know yourself. Living from this place does not require constant mystical awareness. You will still get caught in the rush of daily life, still lose patience, still feel separate at times, but even in those moments, a quiet memory lingers, the memory that the separation is not the whole story. You can return to the deeper truth whenever you pause long enough to notice it. And perhaps this is the greatest gift of seeing when all is one. It makes you gentler. You speak more softly, because you are speaking to yourself in another form. You listen more deeply because every voice is a voice of the whole. You walk more lightly because every step is taken on your own skin. At the end, when the body rests and the mind quiets, what remains is not a collection of isolated moments but the flow that carried them all. You see that every joy and sorrow, every meeting and parting, every birth and death were not events happening to you, they were the ocean moving in its endless dance. And in that recognition, there is peace. Not the peace of having all questions answered or all problems solved, but the peace of knowing you were never truly apart from anything. You were the ocean pretending to be a wave, the sky pretending to be a cloud, the infinite pretending to be a heartbeat, and now the pretending ends. When all is one, nothing is truly lost. Nothing is truly gained. Everything simply changes shape, moving from one form to another in the endless play of existence. And you, who have been all things and will be all things again, can rest in the certainty that you have never left home. And now we arrive at the quiet, after the journey. 30 passages, each one a window into a way of seeing, have opened before you. You have walked through them slowly, letting the words linger on your skin, letting the pauses between them sink into your breath. If you look back, you will notice something. None of these teachings stood apart from the others. They were not steps on a staircase leading somewhere far away. They were spokes of the same wheel, meeting at a center that has always been here. That center is not hidden in a distant temple, or buried in an ancient book, or locked behind the language of sages. It is in the way you sip water when you are thirsty, in the way you close your eyes when the wind brushes across your face, in the way your chest rises and falls without you needing to command it. The timeless philosophies you have read are not instructions to be followed. They are reminders of what you have always known, even before you had words for it. Perhaps, somewhere along these pages, you felt a loosening, a knot in the mind that you didn't realize you were carrying has eased. The urgency to arrive at some final truth has softened. You might have noticed how often the greatest wisdom hid in paradox, strength in surrender, freedom in limits, motion in stillness. At first, paradox feels like a puzzle to be solved, but if you stay with it long enough, you see it is not a riddle with a single answer. It is the nature of life itself, a dance between opposites that are not really opposed. And you, the one listening, the one reading, are not outside that dance. Every choice you make, every thought that moves through you is another step in the pattern. Sometimes it feels like the pattern is leading you. Sometimes it feels like you are shaping it. Both are true, neither is complete. This is why the old masters spoke of walking the pathless path. You are never lost, because the path is wherever your feet touch the ground. You may be wondering what to do with all of this now. Should you change your life? Should you meditate longer? Speak softer? Give more? The truth is, you already have changed, even if nothing visible has shifted yet. A seed has been planted in the quiet of your awareness, and seeds do not need you to pull at them to grow. They only need space, light, and the patience to let the seasons do their work. If you wish to carry something forward, let it be this. No moment is wasted. Even the moments you call mistakes, failures, or losses are threads in the larger weave. The philosophies you have heard here do not erase pain, but they show you that pain is not the whole story. They do not promise eternal happiness, but they reveal that joy is closer than you think, often hidden inside the very things you have been avoiding. Life will not stop being uncertain. People you love will still leave, sometimes by choice, sometimes by time. Your plans will still crumble in your hands. There will still be nights when sleep will not come. But when you remember the truths whispered here, the weight of now, the freedom in limits, the mirror within, the pathless way, you will see that uncertainty is not an enemy to be defeated, but a river to be trusted. You may also notice how your way of looking begins to change. You stop trying to control every conversation, because you can hear the echo of eternity in another person's voice. You stop clinging to each possession as if it defines you, because you see how little you truly need to feel whole. You stop rushing past the ordinary moments, because you recognize them as the very place where the extraordinary hides. And when life feels heavy again, because it will, you can return to any one of these sections like you would to a familiar stone in your pocket. Turn it over in your hand. Feel its texture. Let it remind you of the larger story you are part of. You do not have to remember everything at once. One truth at the right time is enough to change the way the day feels. In the end, all these philosophies point toward the same thing. Presence. To be here fully, without needing the moment to be different before you can love it. To notice the way light falls on the wall. To hear the way your own breath answers the rhythm of the world around you. To sense the invisible thread that connects your first memory to the stars burning millions of years away. That thread is what you have been tracing all along. It winds through the empty cup, through the circle that returns, through the breath that guides. It winds through your laughter and your tears, through your beginnings and endings. It winds through every life that has touched yours, and through countless more you will never meet. It has no starting point and no end. It simply is. And as you feel it now, you may realize that you have not been walking toward truth. You have been walking with it. It has been here in every step, every pause, every question you have carried. The world will pull you back into its noise, but the thread will remain. You can pick it up again at any moment, without ceremony, without searching. When you do, you will remember that nothing in this life is separate, that you are not a fragment trying to fit back into the whole. You are the whole, already and always. And when you know this, even for a breath, you can rest. Because there is nowhere else to be. Because you were never lost. Because all along you have been home.